Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, Arabto, Halloween, brothers and sisters and brothers. This is Ross, Iadon, Rastafari, this is Yadin. Yadin right here for the Tuesday podcast, here the third day of the Shabu, the third day of the week for the T to T, Testify Tuesday here on the air and in the Irish. Let's go.
I'm going to testify.
So here on the T to T, Testify Tuesday, the Tuesday podcast. Here. We're in the 50th sabbatical study for the disciples, fellow disciples, 50th sabbatical study, Kիթաբո, when you enter in. But of course, we like to continue the continuity, from the previous, the 49th degree of the sabbatical study, the kītbוא, when you go forth to war, forth to battle. So here on that theme right here, Jamali with no weapon formed against I and I shall prosper. Jamali. Here it is. Yes, I. Rastafari. Here on the Star Wars version. Rhythm.
Hey, I see them come up against the chosen. Hey, I don't see nothing but wolf in sheep clothing. Let me tell us, that's how we shall see no weapon, cause we no fear evil, now wicked man. Lightning and thunder in a Babylon. Them don't know them judgment can come any second. Hey, there's no weapon we can stop at the storm of Gideon. So we all in Jah make we strong. To bless us today, to see another one. Hey, when you don't know the repercussion, and you just keep on doing wrong, every day we just enter. You're not aware of the reciprocal. Who's gonna save you from crushing on the Babylon wall when it falls? The better you give is the best you receive. Don't accept defeat. Give thanks and praise. Now them finally see it. We stop, we shall be no weapon, cause we no fear evil, now wicked man. Lightning and thunder in a Babylon. Them don't know them judgment can come any second. Hey, there's no weapon we can stop at the time of Gideon. So we all in to make we strong. Blessing up today, if you see another one, yeah. Them don't know the chosen. Ain't no world. Ooh, since she's so there. Just turn the deep into a shallow place. Shorten the days and weeks for the let's say. None of them still believe and have no faith. But I might always thankful for talent in my days. That we shall be no weapon, cause we no fear evil, now wicked man. Like in a thunder in a Babylon. Them don't know them judgment can come any second. Hey, there's no weapon we can stop at the time of Gideon. That's how we hold it, Jah make we strong. To bless another day, to see another one. Hey, be no weapon. Come against with no wicked man.
No weapon, spiritual war.
I'm going to testify. I'm going to testify.
Physical war, spiritual battle. Physical war, spiritual battle. Coat of many colors, no doubt, no fear. Spiritual warfare. Keeping up the covenant, light chaser. World flesh devil, that's a real time waster. Negative vibe bring me down when me high. Try to keep me down, but determined to fly. Wicked I go perish, but the righteous never die. Heart pick from the heaven, 777 when me step in. Thank Jah for the blessing. Prepare my soul for the sanctuary. Regain identity plus memory. Remember the mission where the Father sent me. Never disappoint me. Always here to help me. Show me and guide me. Take lead. Take control. Treading the road of straight and narrow. The Rastafari warrior no afraid of we shadow. Spiritually, physically up. Jaja children look but don't touch.
Yup. Addiction Records. 360 Arm, y'all. Rastafari. You already know what time it is. Time to redeem the time. Praise up that shit back. Living in a world full of zombies, they walking dead. Dumb, deaf, and blind, Gentile Babylonians. I and I have been quickened, redeemed by the Most High, filled with the Spirit. In the new name I walk now. Taboo Rastafari, Selassie on top now. I reap and I sow good fruit. Trample Babylon under I tremble and boot. Fast and pray, idle liberty. Negus, Neget, Selassie, Rastafari. Study in the Holy Scripture, learn the half of the story that they failed to reveal to us. Babylon resistance is useless. Rastafari remain the crown holder regardless. Label me a conscious artist because I remain in the truth and in who's in control of all of this. As we walk and stumble through these valleys and these shadows, must remain focused on the spiritual battle. Led like sheep to the slaughter like cattle, never realizing that you're a divine animal. Imagine if everything you thought became tangible, your hardships manageable. We living with the sickness and Jah is the antidote. Prescriptions and scriptures, words found power, Rastafari deliver.
You speak on God, but you don't know about they good book. You speak on job, but you don't know how far it's been took. For your salvation, you'll forget that humanity. You take advantage while you live it in your fantasies. You know not, you just follow the leader. Easy to fool because you a believer in the man, not the teaching their hand. They writing the scriptures, but you don't understand that we all from the same place. We come from the homeland. We all from Africa. I say that as a grown man. We the same fucking color inside. You can shut your eyes and can't see the divide, but when you open them up, you start seeing the division. They tell you what to think like it isn't your decision. Open your mind, you start to see the truth. You're already divine. It's just up to you.
As we walk and stumble through these valleys and these shadows, must remain focused on the spiritual battle. Led like sheep to the slaughter like cattle, never realizing that you're a divine animal. Imagine if everything you thought became tangible, your hardships manageable. We living with the sickness and Jah is the antidote. Prescriptions and scriptures, words sound power, Rastafari deliver. Praise His holy name, Yahweh Elohim. Study ancient language, Amharic and Hebrew. Uphold commandments as Yah, holy people. Conquering lion prevail over all forms of evil. While I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I know that Elohim will guide I every step. Amen. On His holy word and stand firm. Bear witness to the truth, and from the truth don't turn. Babylon's get a hurting, living and learning. Selassie I teach it, keep the sacrament burning. Every time and everything, I and I give thanks and praise to His holy name. Haile Selassie, elect of the Elohim, conquering line of the tribe of Judah, Solomon dynasty ruler. The one that scripture bear witness will possess the key, redemption of the times for Yah chosen seed. As we walk and stumble through these valleys and these shadows, must remain focused on the spiritual battle. Led like sheep to the slaughter like cattle, never realizing that you're a divine animal. Imagine if everything you thought became tangible, your hardships manageable. We living with the sickness and Jah is the antidote. Prescriptions and scriptures, words sound power, Rastafari deliver.
All right, son, that's yes. Absalom there. Got Absalom there. Before that, we had Ras Faith. Simon Faith, spiritual warfare. Right here, as we pick up with the Torah studies here from the 49th, from Key when you go forth to battle. I like to see a little audible, but first, right here, Army Gideon Ras Andessa with Chain Them, spiritual warfare, Chain Them. Yes, sir.
Babylon remove and them still a use them brain. We got to change them. Cause if we don't, everything remains the same. Mental change them. Keep the people lost and they still don't know their past, so they enslave them. Why, hey, they change them. Babylon remove and them still a use them brain. We got to change them. Cause if we don't, everything remains the same. Mental change them. Keep the people lost and they still don't know their past, so they enslave them. Why, hey. We are out here in Babylon. Look around, cause there's no way to go. Equal rights is for everyone. So do unto those that you would have done. Change them. Babylon remove and them still a use them brain. We got to change them. Cause if we don't, everything remains the same. Mental change them. Keep the people lost and they still don't know their past, so they enslave them. Why, hey, the change them. Babylon remove and them still a use them brain. We got to change them. See if we don't, everything remains the same. Change them. Keep the people lost and they still don't know their past, so they enslave them. Why, to the brain. We are out here in Babylon. Look around, cause there's no way to go. Equal rights is for everyone. So do unto those that you would have belong.
Yes. Army Gideon, Rasan Bessa would chain them. The spiritual warfare. We've forgotten our war cry. The Hebrew war cry, Chazak, Chazak, be strong, we need to chazek and make eye and eye strengthen one another. Hear this, yes I.
Where's our war cry? We don't even know that we're at war. We don't understand that we're in hostile territory. This isn't a time of peace. It's against the principalities and the powers that are puppeteering the people. And we are in a position to see souls set free.
This has been the ancient war cry throughout all the generations of the Hebrew nation.
Rock, Kasak!
Where does it come from? Kasak, this is the Hebrew, the rock-like oomph of the spiritually zealous heart, the game face of a mighty man, tenacity of soul, the gritting of the teeth of the spirit-inspired warrior, and the baring of those teeth to the enemy. Kasak is possessing a resolute and growling resolve for the glory of God, a flush of spiritual fervor, a tensing of all a soldier's muscles. There's a Kasak. We don't have that spiritually. We should. We don't. Because we don't know what we're engaged with. Did you know that you have the armory of heaven? That you have everything you need for life and godliness to push the enemy forces back? And so when you hear Kasak, your knuckles spiritually should immediately turn white. You should find yourself gritting your spiritual teeth with a belligerence against the enemy. He goes down. There are souls that must be saved. And that's just Kasak. The Hebrew statement is Rak Kasak. However, in the Bible, where that came from, it's Kasak Amos. The other word that goes with it, Amos. It's heavenly audacity. It's rushing headlong into the most hazardous and impossible battles without pausing to consider the impossibilities. Who had Amos in the Bible? David against Goliath? That's some serious Amos. Okay, he's rushing headlong against the Goliath. Like, David, you might want to think about this a little. No, I'm not weighing the impossibility. This is for my God. It's your confidence in victory even before the field is taken. It's lambs moving with liquid ferocity straight into the lion's lair. How about the three that overheard him in the cave of Adullam? He says, oh, for a cup of cool water from the well of Bethlehem. Those guys had a mock. They go run out, break through a garrison of Philistines to grab a cup of cool water and then bring it back through the garrison. They're being hunted by Philistines the whole time, trying not to spill a cup of water. That's the mock. Mere men and women on earth are eaten up by the enemy. However, we're not just mere men and women of this earth. We are redeemed. We are bought with a price, and we've been changed into the body of Christ. Amos means swift-footed, all-believing, super-conquering, prevailing faith in the Lord of battles. What happens to the world if Christians once again get Kasak and Amos? You know what the apostles had after Pentecost? Something came into them. What was it? You can say it very simply. Kasak and Amos. Spirit of God. He came in to win. He came in to turn this world on its head. Moses' last gasp was his great speech before the promised land, which he never got to enter into. And he's laying out the ground rules for the kingdom that is about to be established across that Jordan River. Be strong and of good courage. Kasak, Amos. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that does go with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. And Moses called unto Joshua and said unto him in the sight of all Israel, Kasak, Amos, be strong and of good courage. For thou must go with this people unto the land which the Lord has sworn unto their fathers to give them, and thou shalt cause them to inherit it. Well, what's happening there? The men and women of God are coming to take what was purchased, the promise. You were surrounded by 31 hostile empires. That's what they were headed into. 31 empires on the other side of that Jordan River. 31. This is where we are at the Church of Jesus Christ, yet we are there without a war cry. Let's understand that we are out to win for the glory of Jesus Christ. And even if we die, we win. Doesn't matter what happens to our bodies. We obey, God wins. Now suddenly we're crossing. Joshua is the same name for Jesus in the New Testament, by the way. Yeshua. This is the Savior, the man of salvation, who has come in to bring us into the inheritance. Strong and good courage. For unto this people shalt thou divide for an inheritance the land which I swore unto their fathers to give them. Have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of good courage. Rock the sock. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. Rock the sock, Israel. Rock the sock, men and women of God Almighty. all the powers of earth and hell that come against your soul, and all the powers of earth and hell that are puppeteering the lost masses, you hit them square in the teeth. And you show love to this world. To anyone who would spit in your face, you serve them and you love them in return and say, Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. Rock-a-sock, Israel.
Chazak, Amat, Yisrael. So here. 31 nations, the children of Israel coming out that wilderness, a new generation, 31 hostile nations. And here in the Torah reading and feeding, we're going over the direction instructions, and they're applicable even in the Brit Chadash in the New Testament sense. Very, very applicable. So here I'd like to share a little audible right here for continuity purposes. And this is on spiritual warfare. Now it's interesting right here. We call this audible, and it might sound a little bit like, but we're just keeping it real. Why does Jah say no shit? Right? In Jah war camp. Right? Some interesting direction instruction he gives in the previous Torah reading and feeding. And here's Moshe. Moshe is giving his farewell address. He's speaking to a new generation. Right? He's like that elder, almost like that, that granddaddy giving a new generation, the new kids, the new children on the block, that instruction to learn from the ups and downs, mix-ups, the follies, the undercrowns of their parents, right? And to focus on the promise ahead. So I put the audio right there on the Chazak, to be strong, Amat, and of a good courage. Be strong of a good courage. So here, check out the audible right here as we pick up with tonight's previous Torah portion. It's here under key to taste a key to say or key to say weta, line to say key to say when you go forth. When thou goest forth. And in Deuteronomy 23, and the main verse here is verse 14. And it's one verse, it's two verses, because KJV has a colon there. Here in the Chumash, there is a full stop, but we'll go with the sacred KJV, or the sacred English of the KJV here, because the context is more kept in that sense. You can put a period there, but it goes on. Now, this comes under this section here in chapter 23, from verse 10, that says, when thou goest forth in camp against thine enemies. When thou goest forth in camp against thy enemies. Let's go right here. That's verse 10. We're in 23. Okay, actually, that'll be from verse 9 in KJV. When the host goeth forth against thine enemies, then keep thee from every wicked thing. That's how this section, or we say this subsection right here, begins in Deuteronomy chapter 23. Now, how do we address this right here? How do we understand this? Right? How do we understand this right here in chapter 23? Right? Let's just go right here, 23. Go to verse 9. Okay, in verse 9, and Bamarinya, we say Yetor Sefer Nithina at Evavek. Okay, of the camp, of the war camp, cleanliness or hygiene being kept, or the hygiene, keeping of hygiene, at Evavek, Nithina at Evavek, of the Tor Sefer, Tor like a spear, war in the context, and the Sefer is the camp, Bamarinya. So it says, when thou goest forth in the camp against thine enemies, then thou shalt keep thee from every evil thing. All kinds of crimes, from looting to immorality, are rife or enough among an army which is on its way to battle. So when armies are on their way to battle, there's all kinds of crimes that commit, from looting, right? And this is on the way to battle. On the way to battle, the soldiers, something about that numbers and numbers, having, being in a group of fighting men, oftentimes a lot of crimes, looting, immorality goes on as that army is making its way to the battlefront. Even upright men, even men who are otherwise upright or seemingly upright and moral, may then, during battle or war times, act like so-called barbarians or act like heathens and sheathens, act very immorally. Hence, there's a warning here that Israel's Tzava, that the Tzava of Israel, or the Tzaba'ah of Israel, the army of Israel, when marching against its enemies, should keep away from every evil act, every evil thing, any and every evil manner. Talatot shehin litawaga bewetah gizeh. The same phrase, bewetah gizeh, Mamarinya and the authorized, is the same consistently as the kitates is. This portion begins kitates. Mahana, the camp. Mahana, right? Mahana, the camp. When thou goest forward, Mahana, when the camp goes forward, al obeika, against your enemies. Talatochehin, a little wagabe, what ahigize, kakufu negar hulu, so net to him, tabik. So net to him, tabik. Keep your humanity, in a sense. We could interpret that so human being, so net humanness, so net to him, your male humanity, tabik. Kakufu negar hulu. So kufu negar, evil things, they diminish and defile our soulnetachin, our humanity, which is another interesting reason in iditation. But moving on, it says, if there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of that which chanceth him by night, then shall he go abroad out of the camp, he shall not come within the camp. So what is it saying right here? What is it saying right here in verse, in the KJV Bibles, it'll be verse 10. If there be among you any man that is not clean by reason of uncleanness that chanceth him by night, was a nocturnal emission, right? Ejaculation, you understand? Something that's, we're speaking of, or some other kind of issue, right? Then shall he go abroad out of the camp. He shall go outside of the camp, and he shall not come within the camp. Now, there's a colon here as well, so the idea continues in verse 11. But it shall be. What shall be? But it shall be. Wahaya. It shall be. When evening cometh on, he shall wash himself with water, and when the sun is down, he shall come into the camp again. All right. So this is also, we find this now with Torah studies and in Jah law and in the ordinances. We find this as the hygiene for cleansing elsewhere as well. That one would wash their clothes, would wash their body, right? Will stay outside the camp, and then by the evening time they can return to the camp, or by the evening time they are clean. In other words, like this is speaking about in a war camp among the armies, the Tzava or the Tzaba'ah, Tzabaot of Yisrael, the army or the armies of Israel. This is the esprit de corps, right? The spirit of the body. This is the spirit of the camp, right? And this also ensures victory of the camp, being a holy army, right? Being a holy army. So it says in verse 12, thou shalt have a place also without the camp, whither thou shalt go forth abroad. So even when the camp is set up, there would be a place outside of the army camp where one can go forth abroad if chanceth any sort of defilement comes upon the fighting men. This is where they will go. You understand? Cleanse themselves. You understand? Their clothing, cleanse themselves. As it says right here, it says that he shall wash. Well, here it says he shall wash himself with water, because you have to remember they are an army on the march. So if he was back at home or in the community, the civil community, right, he would wash his clothes. Right, the men at war don't have a bunch of change of clothing, like a suitcase, going out to war with a suitcase or something like that. That's not necessarily the case, right? Suitcase, the case. Now, here it says, thou shalt have a place also without the camp, whither thou shalt go forth abroad. Now, here is what is very interesting. What does it mean when it says, thou shalt go forth, right? Thou shalt go forth abroad, right? Thou shalt go forth abroad. Let's just put this right here and get into this right here. Go forth abroad, and the word abroad, right? Chut is the word, Hebrew word chut, right? Chut, chawat, chut. which means outside, outward, or it could be like the street, right? Out in the street, outside, right? The street, out. But now, in the Strong's definition of this word, right, both forms of the word, right, chut, right, or chut, right, is effeminate in the plural. From an unused root mean to sever, properly separate by a wall, that is, outside, outdoors, abroad, in the field, forth, highway, the street, outward, outside, without. So without the camp. Now, why is this important? Well, this is important because of what is said next in verse 13. And thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon. I thought this was interesting. Thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon. It says, thou shalt have a paddle upon thy weapon, and it shall be that when thou wilt ease thyself abroad. Yashab. Now, here in the KJV, when it says, when thou wilt ease thyself, in the Chumash, you said the synagogue Torah says, and it shall be when thou sittest down abroad. The Hebrew word is yashab. Yashab. Yashab, yashab, yashab. Yashab means to dwell, to sit down, to sit. Just like when we say, if you go to the toilet, the context here is like, you shall sit, you shall squat, you shall sit. Right? To take a shit. You shall sit to take a shit. And it shall be when thou sittest down abroad, or when thou sittest down to shit abroad, thou shalt dig therewith, and shall turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. Cover that which cometh from thee. This is one of, even in the Hebrew, when you read this in the Hebrew, or even the English translation here in the KJV, right, the sacred text of the KJV, it has that kind of reticence, right, kind of a moral reticence, but still it's talking about real things, right, talking about defecation. Now, people say, well, why would it say that? I mean, people just go, people got to go, you got to go, you got to go. All right, but John said that's not so. Even if you got to go, you got to go. All right, there's a way that we got to go. So this is also an important part of, the war laws, right? How we would ease ourselves, right? Thou will ease thyself abroad, right? Same word, abroad, chutz. Thou shalt dig therewith and turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. That which is sa'ah, sa'ah. Now, interesting right here, the word sa'ah, right? Sa'ah means filth, human excrement. Excrement, feces. Speaking about feces. Now, in the Strong's, we have this word defined as issue. That is that is excrement, or in this sense, human excrement. We have a different nuance of words for animal excrement too, or dung in that sense. We have certain words that shows that there's a difference, right? For example, animal excrement, certain animal excrement is very good for the farm and for growing food. So human excrement, can we say human excrement ain't worth shit? Really, think about it for a moment, So that is human excrement, or in the King Jamesian, the sacred KJV English, that which cometh from out, or that cometh from, but in a fuller sense, literally that cometh from, right? Or that which cometh from out, that which cometh out from, that which cometh. But literally this word, sa'ah, is filth, human excrement. Is the H6627 word, right? The H, and guess what? This word is linked with yatsa, weta, weta. There we go. To go out, to come out, to exit, to go forth. So here's what's interesting is that from this word, which means to go forth, right? To go forth in the sense to emanate out, but literally to issue out, to bring out, right? Is the word for filth, right? Or you could say excrement, right? Sa'ah. Sa'ah is that which comes out. The ta'ah, yat ta'ah, right? Or the ta'ah, right? The ta'ah, weta, right? So it comes out. Now, that might have been lost in the English reading of it, because how many ones may have read through this and said, have a paddle? What do you mean have a paddle upon your weapon? The word for paddle is the yatid, right? Yatid is like a pin, a stake, a peg, a nail. The idea here, see, it's not like a paddle in that sense, but something so you can dig, almost in a sense on that weapon, you can use it in another way. And the same thing, you dig to dig your ta'ah hole, you know what I mean? You can also give somebody like an enemy, the oyebeka, give them a infection, you know. What's that? But basically, it's a pin. It's a nail, like a large nail. It could be a paddle in that sense, that idea, but not a paddle in the sense of a paddle. It's always good to compare this word, yatid, with the word as it appears elsewhere. A pin, a stake, right? To have a stake on your weapon, you know, a peg, a nail, almost like a tent stake. So you can use that to dig through the earth, make a hole, you understand? Do your cover that over, and keep it moving, right? Now, looking at the KJV, when we was on the Aliyah, we want to bring this out a little bit more because the next verse is interesting. Because the next verse says that for the Lord, the Yahweh, thy Elohim, walketh in the midst of thy camp to deliver thee. Stop for a moment. Remember, these sentences 13 and 14 of chapter 23 are connected. In other words, you're not to have doo-doo shit all over the place, shit in the camp. There's not supposed to be she. We could have gone a little bit long with the she, but just, you know, the idea being, you know, we're not supposed to have shit in the camp. Why? Because Yahweh Loheka, Exyavir Amlaka, right, walketh in the midst of thy camp. And Jah does not want to step in none of your shit. That's what it's saying right here. He says, okay, let's read it as it is. These two lines go together in one sense, one idea. Thou shalt have a paddle, right, or a peg, a stake, right, upon thy weapon, and it shall be when thou wilt ease thyself abroad, sit down, thyself, like squat, sit down, like, you know, like you take a sit on a toilet, but sit down abroad, outside of the camp, thou shalt dig therewith, with that paddle, that yatid, that stake, dig therewith, right, and turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. Cover that which cover the filth, the human excrement that cometh from thee, ki Yahweh Loheka, because of for Jehovah thy power walketh in the midst of thy camp, to deliver thee, and to give up thine enemies before the eye. Therefore, because of this relationship, therefore shall thy camp be holy. Therefore shall thy camp be kadosh, be holy. That he see, get this, that he see no unclean thing. He see none of I she. But you know, when I was going through the Aliyah, I got to the next verse and keeping the center idea really focused on there. It was a little bit of levity, about this very serious matter that ones will just overlook and wonder, well, why, you know, when the Israelites ask many times, and we might ask, well, why is not Jah amongst us? Why isn't he amongst us? Because too much she all over the place. How can he walk amongst us? It's almost like having pollution in the street, you know, like you're not curbing your dog. So in a sense, here's he's saying to curb, you know, Israelite soldier, Israelite, curb your shit. Curb your shit. All right, curb your shit. All right, because if we don't curb our shit, then, as it says in the next verse, right, Jah will not walk in the midst of our camp, will not deliver us, will not give up our enemies before us, because our camp is not holy, it's not hygienic. So it says, therefore shall thy camp be kadosh, that he see no unclean, that he see no erva, right, or erwa. He see no erwa. You know what erwa is? Erwa, in this sense, is nakedness. Erwa is nudity. Erwa is shame. Erwa is pudenda. Pudenda is like the male and female private part, right? Implying shameful exposure, like spread out, so to speak. Nakedness of the thing. See, one raw shit just laying right there, right? In that sense, this is an erwa, even though erwa can be nudity, and erwa can be the nudity of the specific private parts, right? Indecency. Generally, it's indecency. It's improper behavior. You know, like if you walking through, you know, like if I got dogs, right? I got dogs in my camp, and before you can get to the gate, from the gate to the house, you have to like dodge doodle all over the place, like the doodle on the ground and stuff like that on the walkway. You're like, what the hell? You know, you'd be like, you know what? You know, right me. You know, exposed, undefended. But now, erwa, disgrace, blemish, nakedness, shame, uncleanness, especially the pudenda. You know, the pudenda, yes, like the puta in Isaiah, referring to the female parts, or the shofka, or the backward parts as well. But that which, word that which, where it comes from? This word comes from ara. Come on, the word ara. Ara, right? Or ara. There's a hey, which means to ara, right? Or ara, because the R in ara means to bear, to be new, to uncover, but also to leave destitute, to discover, to leave empty, to raise, to pour out, right? To be exposed, right? To spread self, to be spread ego, to be spread out, to be uncovered. You see, the main sense there is to be uncovered. I thought this was such an interesting note right here. This whole connection of this theme right here, since the word shit, right, and the idea of shit, like, you know how we use this word shit, and how the word shit, people don't like to talk about the word shit. Most people probably will be listening and maybe say, Ross, you've been talking shit too much. You've been talking too much shit. You know what I'm saying? But John is telling you to bury that shit and to cover that shit up, so that when he's walking in our camp, right, in the midst of our camp, to deliver us, right, right, and to give up our enemies. I love that part, that phraseology, to give up our enemies. Right, you can give up. Here's the next one. That guy, he hates you too. Yeah. This is the next one. He hates you. Thank you, John, for giving me these haters. Give up thine enemies before thee. Therefore shall thy camp be holy. But this is the verse right here. This is the phrase, that he see no unclean thing in thee, and turn away from thee. And turn. You say, you. Nah. The nakedness, or the idea of uncleanness. Right, the erva, the erwa is the nakedness of anything. To see this naked shit just around there. You know what I mean? So now people talk about curving their dogs and pooper scooper, right, and everything like that. Well, that's good. That is good. All right. But John said even before people got all focused on that, so I began to think and say, wait, you mean perhaps armies, other people didn't have these? I mean, go look at any of the other laws or rules or whatever their other gods told them, like of other nations, and see if you see anything like this. Now people say, well, that's because everybody knows to do that. Really? People, you walk around some of these streets in Babylon, you see doo-doo on the street, and you be like, oh, somebody didn't curve the dog. You're like, that's human doo-doo. That's that's somebody's So this here is very, very, the footnote, right? The footnote says, cover that which come from thee, because anything that is repellent to the sight arouses obscene thoughts and corrupts the mind. Right? He walketh in the midst of thy camp. In addition to major sins, right? Major sins, which was verse 9, right? Israel's armed forces, the Tzaba'ah, were also warned against all kinds of impurities in their camp for two reasons. Reasons Jah declares, right? And these reasons I should hear. The divine presence was in the midst of the camp, and to deserve victory over their enemies. For these two reasons, that the divine presence, the divine face and grace was in the midst of the camp, and to deserve victory over their enemies. Do you think the enemies were concerned about that? You walk through the enemy's camp, and you will have to say, shit. You see? So cover that up, right? Bury it. Cover. You notice also the order of the priority. The instruction says, thou shalt dig therewith and shall turn back. And it said that you go do your doo-doo and then you're going to dig a hole. No, it said, you first dig, in a sense it's a yati, it's like a spike, like a chipper to break up the earth and dig a little, a little hole, you know what I mean? And then you turn your back, right? And turn back and cover that which cometh from thee. It almost implies like, don't even be looking at it, don't be staring at it, looking on it, just do that, sit us down, take care of your shit, right, and keep moving. So the presence, right, of Elohim was indicated. You know how we know this? By the accompanying ark. See, this is the part that's not so overt in the text. We have this also in the Ethiopian, Highland, and Solomonic, Hebraic, and Judaic kingdom, right, of the King of Kings, from such time to such time that the ark accompanied, right, the Tzava'ah. That's why together, though it's the Israel army, the fighting men were the Tzava'ah. That when you have more than one or two, you have Tzaba'ot. So the two right, would be the fighting army, and then also the war priest, because there's a chaplain, right, the Hebrew chaplain. That's the one that would speak to them and say, well, if there's any man, is there any man such and such, and will proclaim the blessing, so forth and so on, and give the exemptions for those who needed exemptions. And he says he is in the midst. So his presence being in the midst of the camp was signified by the priests, right, and the Levites, and the Ark of the Covenant also being in the midst of the camp. Right? That's what it says one will go outside, because in the midst of the camp is the Ark. Right? So if one felt they had to relieve themselves, go outside of the camp. Right? And that means that, okay, say if the armies had to move this way, right? And people just do anywhere. Can you imagine the priest and the priest has to watch out? You know what I mean? I mean, that just mess up everything right there. So we have to look at the logical sense, the practical sense, and then even building up from there, we can see even other senses of it that will allow us, as the ones lost now found black and brown, to regain our senses, even after such long a time. Yeah. So just to point to that right there. And there's other things like that too. This is two verses, because it's likely that somebody would just read through and say, oh, okay, you do that, and not even understand, well, what does it mean, that which cometh out of you, you know, and covered up and a paddle, and what does this mean, for the Lord is in the camp? What does that mean? You know, the Ark of the Covenant also being, you know, the Ark of the Covenant also being in the camp, right, with the Israelites is indicated by this particular verse right here. And then it goes to, you know, other various laws. But this is something to be, you know, to be understood. You know, yeah, here, Bamarinya says, Yawet Awen, Kanta, Yawet Awen, the Asa, Te Kedanawale, right, Yawet Awen, the Wet. So even right there, that word Wet and Sa'a, you know, Wet, you understand? Because the Wet in the Hebrew will be the Yet or the Yet Wet Awen, Yet Awen, Sa'a. There you go. Cover it up. Cover that shit. 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 Cover
These are those that were numbered, which Moses and Aaron numbered, and the princes of Israel, being 12 men. Each one was for the house of his fathers. Each one was for the house of his fathers, 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 for the house of his fathers. So were all those that were numbered of the children of Israel by the house of their fathers from 20 years old and upward, all that were able to go forth to war in Israel, 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 with all that were able to go forth to war and go forth to war and go forth to war and go forth to war in Israel, with all that were able to go forth to war and go forth to war in Israel, 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 to war in Israel.
J-Pass to Juggernaut. J-Pass to
Inna me tune, me fight a war. Sun a shine, your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool, this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. Inna me tune, me fight a war. Sun a shine, your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool, this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. You must have fool go kill the class. Pills you fill them with so fast. Skills you give no really last. Tell the people about a cross. Who if you take the picture off. Open scripture, read the Psalms. Yesterday David Solomon, you get the lecture Babylon. For the herb no murder one. Like herbs or even herbs. I'm still at your words that keep me strong. All the words to me belong. Not to they grow to me belong. Africa road me need me land. No sell, no soul, no please, no job. 7 the gold, the covenant. In a me tune, me fight a war. Sun a shine, your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool, this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. In a me tune, me fight a war. Sun a shine, your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool, this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. Never know Jerusalem, not even afraid of Bukaram. Ganja fill my Okaram, Vatican a dirty one. Cause in a me dream me reach a star. Nothing for teach so preach a guan. Sit down in a me beach afar. The water deep, the beat a fat. Corporeal release was fast tutorials. Me teach a class. 7 a task a each a pass. Socrates not even task. No Rome, no Greece, no Peter Pan, no John the Christ and Easter born. How you eat the Easter bun around the feet and beat a come. And in a me tune me fight a war. Sun a shine your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. In a me tune me fight a war. Sun a shine your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. Must be deep it beats a drum for months to weeks. The heat a bun. Sun release a piece a gun. No drum no creep around for fun. Looking around a purge of some. Use a town a splurge around. Drink around go murder young. Older people learn me song. Now go ease the journey long. Over evil good belong. Rasta reason out a plan and ganja see some pounds and grand police. For beat the youth for one. Wap on streets a smoke my strand. Inna me tune me fight a war. Sun a shine your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. Inna me tune me fight a war. Sun a shine your sight afar. Up in a tomb and dead no walk. Something so cool this kind of talk. Sitting up in a me holy ark. Riding up in a the souls apart. Giving us all a older chat. Living is just a counterpart. 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 Counterpart.
Yes. Give thanks. That was Ross Maisha right there with Fight a War, Spiritual Warfare right here on the Ear and the Iris. The psalm, the evening psalm appointed here for the third day, that's called according to the Gregorian calendar. Tuesday, we have Psalm 82. Here.
Psalm 82.
מזמור פבט, מזמור לאסף,
God standeth in the congregation of the mighty, the mighty, the mighty, the mighty, the mighty, the mighty.
אלוהים ניצב בעדת אל.
He judgeth among the gods, the gods, the gods, the gods, the gods, the gods.
בקרב אלוהים ישפוט.
How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Selah. Defend the poor and fatherless. Do justice to the afflicted and needy. Deliver the poor and needy. Rid them out of the hand of the wicked. They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. I
have said, ye are gods, you are Elohim. But shall die like men. Interesting right there. We've touched on that before, the judges of Yisrael. It's Israelite psalm, so that's referring to the judges, right, of Yisrael, are referred to as the Elohim, because they are the agents of Yahweh, of Jehovah, Eloheinu, Ayin power. But right here, Rosh Shiloh, to Rhema tune with Psalm 82 right there. We have rights, the rights of the poor.
Rastafari, Holy Emmanuel, Jamaica, Marcus, oh yes, Rasta. I come to defend the rights of the poor, for the oppression of the poor have I arrived. I come to defend the rights of the poor. For the oppression of the poor have I arrived. Listen, I come to judge all your judges. Behold, I come to teach all teachers. Dismantling all of their false leaders. Liberating all Africans. That's Rasta holy only mission. Liberating all Africans. That is Rasta mission. So tell them chapter, this is judgment on Babylon. Well, yeah, Rasta come to defend the rights of the poor. For the oppression of the poor have I arrived. Rasta come to defend the rights of the poor. For the oppression of the poor have I arrived. Listen, they tried to kill the father, and they could not slay the son. They tried to destroy Mama Africa, the foundation of creation. Oh yes, the foundation of creation. Well, yeah. I come to defend the rights of the poor. For the oppression of the poor have I arrived. Rasta come to defend the rights of the poor. For the oppression of the poor have I arrived. Listen, I come to judge all your judges. Behold, I come to teach all teachers. Dismantling all of their false leaders. Liberating all Africans. That's Shiloh holy only mission. Liberating all Africans. That is Rasta mission. So tell them chapter, this is judgment on Babylon. Well, yeah, Rasta comes to defend the rights of the poor. For the oppression of the poor have I arrived. I come to defend the rights of the poor.
Yes, the rights of the poor. Read over that psalm, the Tuesday evening psalm again, Psalm 82. The Israelite context, and that's why it says that we are gods, we are Elohim, not individually but collectively. We have a duty. We have his name upon us. Therefore, we are to judge and to rule in his name and in his way because we are his representatives. But then it says that ye shall die like men. Right? The fall of man. But then at the end of the psalm it says, rise. That's a resurrection right there. So it's on the theme of spiritual warfare and a theme of warfare from the previous 49th sabbatical study, Kitae. When you go forth, full of context, Kitae, La Milhama, to war. Touched on the no shite in the camp. As we mentioned, that was very interesting when our eyes finally opened and said, wait, he even gives them instruction concerning how even their war camp was to be set apart, was to be holy to ensure that victory, the victory of good over evil. But here, I'd like to touch on a couple of more points from the previous sabbatical study as we're here coming to the fullness of this year, even the new year coming forward Hebraically in the season and the time right here. So let's touch on another teaching here, and that's Israelite war laws. What were the war laws? What were the rules of engagement? And also peace. Yes, peace. You say, well, war and peace. Well, exactly. There are war laws, right? Direction, instruction, rules of engagement, things that we are permitted to do in warfare and that which we are permitted not to do or not permitted to do. In other words, there's a positive and a negative commands. There's the thou shalt do, ta'aseh, and lo, ta'aseh, and thou shalt not do. But what about this peace? Remember what Yeshua Robenu Yeshua, I and I, Black Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, what did he say? Right? He says, don't think, right, that his peace is like the world's peace. He's come to bring peace like the world brings peace. So I want you to hear this from the Torah, because most of Yeshua, Jesus Christ's quotes were from the Torah. But he's bringing out the reality, the application right now, the practical application. So first, give ear right here. Like to touch on Israel's the war laws, rules of engagement, and shalom and peace. Very interesting context to his peace, not to confuse his peace, Yeshua peace, Jesus peace, as one would say, Yeshua peace with the world peace.
Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Here, Shema Yisrael, hear, O Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Jehovah our Elohim, Yahweh Echad. He who be, Jehovah the one. Here.
Ki teifea lam milhama al oibeka una tano Yahweh Eloheka bil yadeka we shabita shibuyo ki teifea lam milhama al oibeka una tano Yahweh Eloheka bil yadeka we shabita shibuyo. When thou goest forth to battle against thine enemies, and the Yahweh Eloheka, thy Elohim, deliverest them into thy hand, and thou carriest them away captive. Ki tiz'eya lam milhama al oibeka unatano Yahweh Eloheka biyadeka we shabita shibuyo. First words, Hebrew first words for this 49th weekly Torah portion, reading and feeding an annual Rastafari sabbatical study. So this sabbatical strong. Ki teif'e, lam milhama, when thou goest forth to battle. When thou goest forth to battle. Ki teif'e lam milhama. The text here refers to a war other than against the peoples of the Canaan. The text here refers to a war and warfare and the rules of engagement for warfare with those other than against the peoples of Canaan. Now, this is a continuation actually of chapter 20 of the fifth book of Moshe, the Hebrew book of Deuteronomy, the Sefer Devarim. So Deuteronomy chapter 20 and 19, here we have a continuation of the text and of the rules of engagement. The rules of engagement, we call it the war laws, the wars of Yahweh, the Yahweh laws, dealing with the manner of waging war, which was interrupted by the institution of breaking the heifer's neck. So the text, the war text, we have an interruption of the war laws for this very important, seemingly. Some would say, well, why does this text of the heifer and the breaking of the heifer's neck interrupt the continuation of the war laws? Now, first things first, let's get a context here. Once again, ki teif'e lam milhama, when thou goest forth to battle. The text, it referring to a war or any war according to the type, other than against the peoples of the Canaan, because the 7 nations of Canaan, there was to be no shalom, no peace, but an extermination horde. According to the Torah, according to the text, according to the studies right here. Now, we're going to ask ourselves, why is this? Why is there a difference? Why are we given separate rules of engagement for other peoples except those 7 nations? Those 7 nations, John already gave the extermination horde. Right? There'd be no peace, the total extermination for these 7. And what does the 7 signify? in the Brit Chadash, in the Hadith Kida, in the New Covenant, what do these 7 signify? Now, the number 7, very interesting. Some say that's a God number, a spiritual number, divine number. The science of the number 7 is important here, especially in the context concerning, as the text says furthermore, al-oibeika, against al-oibeika. Oibeka, against thine enemies, when thou goest forth to battle against thine enemies. Ki teisea la milchama al oibeka. Now, since the text here continues from Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 19, let's do a reference to chapter 20, verse 19, and let's see where it ends right here. Right, verse 19, it says, when thou shalt besiege a city a long time in making war against it to take it, thou shalt not destroy the trees thereof by wielding an axe against them, for thou mayest eat of them, but thou shalt not cut them down, for it is the tree of the field, man. For it is the tree of the field, man, that it should be besieged of thee. For it is the tree of the field, man, that it should be besieged. Now, see, here's in the Chumash. This is what we have in the Chumash. In the Chumash, that is the translation of which, no doubt, if you're looking at the KJV, the standard KJV, King James Version, and we look at this corresponding text in the KJV translation, in the old, you could say, sacred English translation of chapter 20, verse 19, the reading would be, when thou shalt besiege a city a long time in making war against it to take it, thou shalt not destroy the trees thereof by forcing an axe against them, for thou mayest eat of them, and thou shalt not cut them down. Now here in the KJV and other Bibles, you might see a parenthetical, open parentheses, for the tree of the field is man's life, close parenthesis, to employ them in the siege. So here it's now touching on the tree, man's life. There's another verse before the discontinuation, the ending of the chapter 20 of Zedagim of Deuteronomy, chapter 20. Now here we pick up with 21 and 10. And the text here is a continuation, right, of the war laws, right, that are given to Israel, the rules of engagement that are for nations other than the 7 nations of Canaan. There are specific war laws, or we say the war ord. There's a specific war ord that's given against the 7. Now it's interesting, the 7, looking at the 7 nations of Canaan, the 7 heads on the dragon, you know, this 7, right, within the scriptures, right? Returning to that, make a note of the 7, right? And also review the broadcast on this platform here, especially the Woman's Wednesday, Sister Mariama Tene, and going into the numbers and going into the 7 scripturally, biblically speaking. So it's very important to understand those 7, especially as we look at the 7 nations of Canaan according to the Brit Yeshana, the old covenant. And then when we now go to that new and living way that he has consecrated for us through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. Speaking of our black Lord and Savior, Yeshua HaMoshiach. So, seeing that the Old Testament, right, according to the words of Moshiach and the revelation of the New Covenant, the Old Testament was a shadow, right, the shadow. In the New Covenant, we have the fullness of what the shadow, right, was projected from. You know, like when someone has a shadow, you see a shadow, the shadow is being reflected off of the true substance. So we're going to look at the shadow first and looking at the Old Testament scripture and then trace it, right, in the Moshiach, in Yeshua, in the word, in the spirit of truth. That's what we say, grab your pen, your paper, your sacred scripture, Bible, right, and bring a willing and a repentive heart and mind. That's the key. That's the key. Right? You must be born again. Right, have a change, a metanoia, a change of mind. When we just look at it, we say, okay, this is war laws. We can understand it like that according to the natural, right? But we need to understand it according to the first type, because the first things are the natural, the earthly things. As Moshiach Rabboni said, if I've shown you earthly things and you do not comprehend it, how will you be able to comprehend the heavenly things? Right? If I show you natural things and you don't comprehend it, how will you be able to understand the spiritual things? How? Amen. It's the next verse right here in 2020. It says, only the trees which thou knowest that they be not trees for meat or for food, thou shalt destroy and cut them down. And thou shalt build bulwarks against the city that maketh war with thee until it be subdued. Those are very important instructions. Most will gloss over it. Not I and I, not the followers and disciples of the King of Kings Christ, of his Master Moshiach. We're going to study to shew ourselves approved. What we're saying is a type and a type. Right? A type and a type. Remember, there's two classes, we could say, of enemies. There are those of the 7 nations, right, and specific war ordinance against the 7 nations of the Canaan. And then we have other nations, right, and other peoples, right? And here is where the continuation, right? Here's where this detail is very, very important. Now, even here, as we link with the continuation, where we're continuing Kitates A, right? Kitates A in Deuteronomy 21 and 10 is a continuation from 20 and 19. And then we have this little interlude concerning the breaking of the heifer's neck. But even before that there, which begins in chapter 21, the first part of chapter 21, the first, we could say 9 or so verses, we have 2 verses right here. And it's concerning 2 different kinds of trees. Found that to be interesting. Have you noticed that? The 2 different kinds of trees, right? There's one tree that is a fruit-bearing tree. And then there's the other tree, which is fruitless and not fruit-bearing tree, but may be utilized in the siege against those cities, right, that would not accept the terms of shalom, our terms of shalom. But the first thing we proclaim is shalom, right, the gospel, the good news, the gospel of peace. So Moshe Yeshua said, think not that I've come to, the peace. What kind of peace? So let's connect that as well, where we see where the proclamation, right, of the Tzabaot of Israel, of the army, the Tzava of Israel is promote what? Proclaim what? What's the first thing to proclaim? Shalom. Right? What is the gospel? The gospel is gospel of peace. We hold our beautiful are the feet, right, from the mountain, the one who proclaims the good tidings of peace, that proclaims shalom. Right? So they refuse that shalom, then it's war. Right? So we have these war ordinances, and we have to study these war ordinances firstly and foremostly in the context of the Old Testament type. How was it then? Right? Because see, when we recognize how was it then, and with the spirit and the truth and that born again heart and mind, and taking the time to enjoy and to see it from Jah's view. What is Jah's view? What was the instructions he was instructing the children of Israel to do? Right? And why were these instructions so instructed likewise? Right? That's the first thing. Did the children of Israel do it? Right? We learn from the object lessons here because all the scriptures are written, right? For our instruction, for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Right? So right here, there's these 2 types of trees, which is very interesting. Right? The 2 types of trees. Now, of course, I'm making an overt allusion to the Canaanites, right? Chop down, cut down, you may destroy them, right? But here, with the trees, it's permissive according to the Bible. But here's also a sign as well, a sign. Think about the parables, right, of Moshe Yeshua, right? The parables of the tree, the parables of the good man, the land, the seed planted. How about the parable of that tree, right? That was planted in good soil, but did not bring forth fruit. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to look at that as well. Let's make notes of that. So here, as we go through a first reasonment, it's a kind of first word reasonment right here. In fact, let us look into this a little bit more. As we know, this Torah portion, the 49th weekly Torah portion. Here we have Ki Te Tzei, Ki Te Tzeiah. Ki Te Tzeiah, Lam Milchama Al Oibeika. When thou goest forth to battle against thine enemies. So we got to identify the Oibe, right? The Oib. Right? Who are the Oibs? Right? Who are the Oibs here? The Oibeka. Who are the Oibes? Right? Who is Oibeka? Who is your enemy? Right? Who are the enemies? Right? Who are our enemies here? According to the Torah, right? In the text, in the context of the text, who are the enemies being spoken of? As I said, the text here refers to a war other than against the peoples of Canaan, other than against the 7 nations of Canaan. It's almost like saying the war that we have, right? The spiritual warfare, other than the 7 heads on the dragon, right? The 7 heads on the dragon, other than those 7, other than those 7. You know what I'm saying? Other than. Now, let's look at where the text picks up from. This is a continuation of Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 19. That's dealing with the manner or how the rules of engagement, of waging Jah's wars, the wars of Yahweh, of the Yahweh, of Jehovah, which was interrupted by the institution of the breaking of the heifer's neck. And that was concerning the inquest for the slain, a murdered person, right? What was to be done to avoid the guilt, right? That guilt and the adverse effect on the land. Those things that pollute, this is the blood pollutes the land. The bloodshed of the innocent pollutes the land. All right. Now, that's not the only text that interrupts, but what's connected with that breaking off there, before we get to the end of chapter 20, beginning chapter 21, where we are right here. We're at 21 and 10 for this 49th Kitav, when thou goest forth, going forth. The context is going forth to battle against who? The Oibeka, against thy male enemy. But now let's pick up right here with chapter 20, so we can get the connective here. Right? In chapter 20, verse 1 says, when thou goest forth, let's bring this up. It says, when thou goest forth to battle against thine enemies, and seest horses and chariots and a people more than the eye, be not afraid of them, for the Yahweh thy Elohim, Eloheka, is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Now, it's interesting because we look at the language, it says, ki teisei la milchama. Very same words we have here. Ki teisei la milchama. When thou goest forth to battle, al oibeka, against your enemies. Very same words. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words. We have these same 5 words that begin off this 49th sabbatical Torah portion here. Ki teisei. The same opening words, ki teisei, same words, ki teisei la milchama, al oibeka, against that oibeka, against your male enemies. Now, before the raid here in Chumash, some of the Chabarim have maybe touched on this. Let's get this into the reasoning here and the testimonial right here for this 49th. When thou goest forth to battle, ki teisei la milchama, al oibeka. The subject of making war immediately follows that dealing with compensation for the loss of a limb, to intimate that seriously disabled men, a seriously disabled man, right, men are exempt from military service, from service in the tzava, right, the tzabaot, the sabaot, the host. It is to be connected with thine eye shall not pity. Where do we have that? We have that, right? We have that within the scripture, right? Thine eye shall not pity. All who are under obligation to serve must be compelled to do so. All who are under obligation to serve. That means thine eye. I shall have a new name, precious name, new name, Rastafari, right? A new name. So we carry that name. There's an obligation that comes with carrying that name, all right? And thine eye shall not, what? Shall not pity. We have that in verse 21. And thine eye shall not pity in chapter 19:21, Deuteronomy. And thine eye shall not pity, but life shall go for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. I have to say this. Who was that fool that said, that spoke against one of your leaders, or the leaders of that previous Bamidbar wilderness generation? Then he had a dream, right? He had a dream, all right? He had a dream. Let the dreamer dream his dream. All right, wake up. It's time to wake up. And thine eye shall not pity. And thine eye shall not pity. Life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. What do we have here? All right, it says, Willow, tachos, tachawas, Willow, tachos, Aineka, thy eye, and thy eye shall not pity. The subject of making war immediately follows that dealing with compensation for the loss of a limb. Some say, well, the eye for eye and the tooth for a tooth, and we'll all be blind and we, we'll be lame and stuff like that. Well, hold on for a moment. The eye for eye and tooth for tooth here says that if you wrong one, then by God's just law of keeping the balance, right? Keeping the balance, balancing the equation. Do you not think that an equation should be balanced? Right? That it should be in balance, and when things are not. How you feel when you don't feel balanced? Right? Like in health wise, if your health is not balanced, that's good. So you should stay unbalanced. And what happens? You ever ride a bike and you lose your balance? You ever skating? You ever doing anything and you ever walking and you lose your balance? So let's understand this, that the subject of making war immediately follows that dealing with compensation for the loss of a limb. Right? There should be compensation for. I mean, people all day they talk about someone owes them, and then they say I was wrong. Somebody took something of mine and I deserve to have this back. Or, like, so as you go to work and you're working this hard and you're working overtime because you're counting that money and somebody just snatches part of that. I mean, that's cool. That's cool with you, right? Because eye for an eye and tooth for tooth in life, we will all be blind and lame then. That means if there's that much sinning and taking then you'll need to be blind and lame for a moment. Because the Messiah says it's better to enter into, right, the kingdom, missing some bad part, then getting your whole part thrown in downstruction, headed for self-destruction. And thine eye shall not pity. Welo tahos oineka. Welo tahos oineka. Nefesh be nofesh, right? Oin be oin. Shin b'shin, yad b'yad, regel b'regel. Then I shall not pity. Welo tahos oineka. Now, in the study of the text and the application of the text, right, and the ancient sages, the Rebbeinu and the Memharan, the teachers of Torah and the rabbis, they interpreted the eye for eye to mean that the payment of monetary compensation. Now, we can go into a little deeper reasoning for those who are so interested. Exodus chapter 21, verse 24, and Numbers chapter 35, 31. And Degna means again, Exodus chapter 21, verse 24, and Numbers chapter 35, verse 31, for the eye for eye. The oin, right? The eye, the oin, right? The oyin, the oyin. Oyin, the oyin. It says, Welo tahos oineka, and thine eye shall not pity. So interpreting this in the active use within the community, it wasn't literally that somebody going to pull out your eye or such and such, but it was showing the principle, right? That principle of the balancing of the equation, right? The balancing of the equation. Thine eye shall not pity, especially a false witness. Thine eye shall not pity, an eye for an eye, the payment of monetary compensation. Now, when we pick up with chapter 20, right? Because this Torah portion, picking up here with chapter 21 and 10, is a continuation of what began in chapter 20. Thus, we have even the similarities of what was the 5 words. Those 5 words, ki te tseya lam milchama al oibeka. Very same words here in 20 and 1, and in the beginning for this Torah portion in 21 and 10. All right, very same words. Ki te tse lam milchama al oibeka, when thou goest forth to battle against thine enemies. Now there were those who were to be exempt, disabled men. Those seriously disabled are exempt from military service, as well as other disabilities, right, or conditions that would righteously exempt a man of Israel, a son of Israel, from battle. We can get into those details as well. We've already touched on from the previous Torah portion, but it deserves the reasonment for Ilan to reason and be able to articulate, right, what it is that we understand or what it is that we think we understand, because iron sharpen iron, right? Iron sharpen iron. Water reflect water, right? It is to be connected with thine eye shall not pity. All who are under obligation to serve must be compelled to do so. So those who are able-bodied, those who didn't just buy a house or just marry a woman, or who are not faint or weak-hearted. That's what it's saying in the Torah. All right. If you bought a house, dedicated, livicated, right? Living it, livicated. If you planted a garden, fulfill that. Right? So you eat the first of that, right? If you married a woman, well, then you take her and enjoy her, let her enjoy you. Josh says so in the Torah. All right. If you're not weak-hearted or faint-hearted, then get up, stand up for Jah fight. But first, Shama'ah. Let us hear what is truth and right to be done in Jah fight, and also who to fight, and also how to fight. Amen. So here it says, Ki teitzei la milchama al oibeka. All right, not to get into all the details right here, but it's interesting that it begins off, right, stating, when thou goest out to battle against thine enemies, and seest horses and chariots and a people more than thou, be not afraid of them. So appearances, not to judge by appearances. We see our enemies more so. They got more numbers, right? They stand on the street corner and they say all manners of evil against us falsely. For Jah, Rastafari namesake, but as the scripture says, thou shalt not be afraid of them. For the Yahweh, the I Elohim, Eloheka is with the I. That's the great Emmanuel, Jah, Elohim. The power is with us, which brought the I up out of the land of Egypt. And it shall be, when ye are come nigh near to the battle, that the priest shall approach and speak to the people. That when y'all draw nigh near to battle, all right, so as we're drawing near to battle, the priest shall approach and speak. The priest will approach and speak to the people. Speak to Jah people and say to them. What will he say to them? Shema'ah Yisrael. Hear, O Israel, y'all draw nigh this day to battle against your enemies. Let not your heart faint. Fear not, nor be alarmed, neither be y'all affrighted at them. Ki Yahuwah Eloheikem. For the Yahweh, your Elohim, is he that goeth with you to fight for you against your enemies, to save you. This is a very powerful statement, word sound. All right. So when the priest, HaKohen, says that, each of us must receive these words as, I will hear, I will Shema'ah, drawing near this day to battle against our enemies. I will not let our heart faint. I fear not, I'm not alarmed, neither am I affrighted at them. For Jehovah Jah, I power is he who he be that goeth with I and we, to fight for I against our enemies, to save I. That's how we encourage one another. That's how we encourage our own soul. What does David did, right? Remember that scene that's what about, when they took one of the enemy-ites, got their name, they took David's wife, his two wives, and their children, and took a lot of the other them, women and children, and the soldiers that was rolling with David, they were so upset they wanted to stone him. What did David have to do? He had to encourage himself. Right? Hashem Yahuwah had to encourage himself. I have to encourage ourselves. See, when HaKohen speaks this word, Shema'ah Yisrael, and he says to us, right, that y'all draw nigh this day to the battle against your enemies. How do we hear this? Do we take heed? Do we take heed? Or we let noises and other things and what's going on around us? Do we take these words in? To the innermost of the innocence? Right? When HaKohen says, Shema'ah Yisrael, y'all draw nigh. We're supposed to receive that as we draw nigh, as I draw nigh, I draw nigh, this day to the battle against your enemies, to this day to the battle against our enemies. Let not your heart faint. I will not let our heart faint. Fear not, I fear not, nor be alarmed, I am not alarmed. Neither be y'all affrighted at them. I is not affrighted at them. Why? Ki Yahuwah Eloheikem, Ha Holek, Imakem. For Jehovah, your power is he that goeth with you. Goeth with us for what purpose? Hilachem. To do what? To fight. Lachem. To fight for you against your enemies. To save you. Im. Oi bekem. Le Hoshia. Le Hoshia. Etekem. To Hoshia. Hosha'ena. Hoshi. Says what? Le Hoshia. Going forward to say Hoshia Etekem. All of y'all. All I and I. Hoshia. Hosha'ena. All right, to save I and I. That's what the Kohen will say. Then the officers speak to Ha'am, the people. Speak to Jah's fighting among them, saying, what man is there that have built a new house and have not dedicated it, says, but we say livicated it. Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man livicate it. And what man is there that have planted a vineyard and have not used the fruit thereof? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man use the fruit thereof. That would be wrong. And what man is there that hath betrothed a wife, a woman, a Isha, and have not taken her? Let him go and return to his house, lest he die in the battle, and another man take her, because that would be wrong too. And the officers shall speak further to Ha'am, the people, and they shall say, what man is there that is fearful and faint-hearted? So even if a man is fearful and faint-hearted, as I now say, weak-hearted, let him go and return to him house, lest his brethren's heart melt as his heart. Because y'all don't need just numbers. You don't need the big numbers. So I have to get a certain number. Right? But it's those who make their wills obedient to God's good influence. Show up, come forward. And it shall be when the officers have made an end of speaking to the people that the captains of hosts shall be appointed at the head of the people. Then ones and ones are appointed. Right? Because the command and the control in God's order. See, we learned about order. All right, so it's about order in the family. We said the man is the head of the womb man, right? And the head of the man is Christ, and the head of Christ is Abba Father, right? There's even an order, right? Even an order here on the battlefield. There's order. And it says, when thou drawest nigh to a city to fight against it, it says, then we draw nigh, then proclaim what? Proclaim shalom to it. All right, proclaim shalom. Now, interpreting this verse, of nations other than, this is to be interpreted of nations other than the inhabitants of the Canaan, nations other than those 7 nations. But some would understand it also of these particular 7 nations. Well, let's go on. Some point out that Moshe offered peace to Sihon, king of the Amorites, and only after he declined the offer did Moshe make war against them. There are, however, 2 important differences between a war against the 7 Canaanite nations and a war against other peoples. Did you know that? There's differences, and 2 major ones we're going to point out. See, with the latter, speaking about the other nations other than the Canaanite nations, only the males were to be slain, and the women and children were saved alive only were of other nations that sought to reject the shalom, Einai shalom. When they were defeated, the males were slain, but the woman and the children were saved alive. Now, with the Canaan, right, the 7 nations of Canaan, no one, male, female, woman, children, no one was to be spared. Furthermore, in the event of the accepting Yisrael's shalom, peace offer, the other nations had only to recognize Israel's sovereignty. Whereas the 7 nations of Canaan, in the Old Testament sense, like the seven heads of the dragon, right, who actually lived among Israel, had to accept the elementary laws of humanity. And what are those elementary laws? It's just elemental. Well, what are those elementals? They are known as the 7 commandments of the sons of Noah, or the Noahide. The Noahide. Now, if it make the answer of shalom, suppose they said shalom, they accept it. The reason why the Gibeonites didn't take advantage of this law, but resorted to trickery. Remember in Joshua chapter 9, verses 3, some say it's either that they anticipated Yahushua's shalom, peace offer, or they wanted to attain the status of an ally. They wanted to be an ally other than that of a tributary people. So one can be an ally of I, or they can be a tributary. It's important for I to understand these differences as well. Now, as we go through this, we now pick up here in the 49th Kitays, right? A continuation, those very 5 words that we have at the beginning of chapter 20, we have here at the beginning of this 49th weekly Torah portion, reading and feeding, in chapter 21 and 10. Kitays La milchama al oibeka, and the beautiful captive, and the beautiful captive, and seest among the captives a woman of goodly form, and thou hast a desire to her, and wouldest take her to be to thee to wife, would take her to yourself to be your Isha. Right, to be your Isha. Well, what about that? What is take her to thee to wife? Here, some say scripture makes a concession to human weakness. Some say it's making concession to man's weakness. I say that it's just recognizing the facts of the matter, but we need to understand the text and the context of this. Firstly, in its Old Testament type. And then let's ask a question. Does this apply in the Brit Chadasha, the Hadith Kitan? In the new covenant, and how and in what way? Come, make I reason. Shalom, Habarim, Shalom. This is the Ras Rastafari of the LOJ Society of His Imperial Majesty, touching a little bit on this Torah portion. Testify, yes, I got to testify what Jah Rastafari has done, what he's doing, and what he will do for I and we, called by that new name, Rastafari. Shalom, Habarim. Shalom, 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 shalom.
I'm gonna testify.
Hear, O Israel. Hear, O Israel. What does Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Achad, hear, O Israel, hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God, the Lord is one. What does that really mean? And why is it important?
Like shalom, my brother, shalom, my sister, shalom, shalom. I give you love, I give you peace, shalom. Shalom, shalom, my brother, shalom, my sister, shalom, shalom. I give you love, I give you peace, shalom, shalom. That's minor.
I'm gonna testify.
Who can find a virtuous woman? Who can find a virtuous woman? Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth the field, and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard. She girdeth her loins with strength, and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She maketh fine linen, and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her. Praise her in the gates. The end of the Proverbs. Who can...
I notice y'all really can't stand it whenever I make a post defending black men. There's always a barrage of comments like, we got to hold them accountable. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for accountability, but when do we not hold black men accountable? It's like every day, every time I get on the internet, someone is always talking about what black men not doing right. As a matter of fact, the only time we do bring up black men is to hold them accountable for the stuff that they not doing. I mean, it's almost like we're letting our personal experiences and the media, first and foremost, dictate how we feel about our own men. Never mind the several instances of black men who were protecting black women. Never mind the black man who pulled a black woman out of a burning building. Never mind the black man who jumped in front of a group of girls and lost his life defending them. Never mind the black men who were taking 12-hour shifts to defend a black woman in their neighborhood. Never mind that the majority, the vast majority, over 80% of black men are married to black women. We got to stop letting the media tell us that our men don't love us and protect us. That's a lie. This country is hell-bent on destroying our men. Let's not help them.
Shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, shuba shuba, shuba 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 day, shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, yeah 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 yeah. Now the real man can live without the woman. Like night to day, says a woman to her man. She's essential to his purpose and his mission. A good woman is a glory to her man. She'll never take the power, still let's make him a better man. Every great man has a virtuous woman. Woman, you say you love me, you never leave me lonely, yeah. You always be there for me, the need not to worry, yeah. Woman, to keep my strong with the part of your plan. I leave my mom and dad, find a woman and be one. With a woman I make my bond, perfect combination. I am a black man, some love me black woman. Woman, I give me this sweet, sweet love. Oh, oh, any time of day, yeah, lots of kisses and hugs. Oh, I burn out all yeah, yeah. No real man can live without the woman. That night to day, says a woman to her man. She's essential to his purpose and his mission. A good woman is a glory to her man. She'll never take the power, she'll just make him a better man. Every great man has a virtuous woman. Woman I love and honor. The party of the life career, the Empress Omega. The mother Rastafari culture revises to the king and his empress Menin, who showed us the right and the true way of living. Woman could never cause sin, so listen as I sing. But the women on the earth, my joy bell ring, ring, ring. Equality in Zion, my nature's law, that's the way it should go. For every man I know there is a woman. You meet the valley, that's all I know. Oh, oh yeah. Shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, shuba shuba, shuba 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 day, shuba shuba, shuba shuba day, shuba shuba day, shuba 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 day. Well, I say the family unit is fundamental and important, you know. The real man can't live without someone, you know. A person's gonna rise to keep on the pure father, mother, child wants, you know. I go, you know. Now. The real men can live without the woman. Like night to day, says a woman to her man. She's essential to his purpose and his mission. A good woman is a glory to her man. Woman, you say you love me. You never leave me lonely. Yeah. You always be there for me. So need not to worry. Yeah. Woman to keep my strong, which is part of your plan. I leave my mom and dad, find a woman and be one. With a woman I make my bond, perfect combination. I am a black man, so I love me black woman. Woman I give me this sweet, sweet love. Oh, any time of day, yeah, lots of kisses and hugs. Rasta man I burn out all, yeah. No real man can live without the woman. Like night to day, says a woman to her man.
I'm going to testify.
So here we have Psalm 5, the 5th Psalm, speaking on prayer and the principles of prayer. Let's give a first here, right here, today's daily Psalm.
מזמור למנצח אל הנחילות מזמור לדוד 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 מזמור לדוד.
Give ear to my words, O Lord. O Lord.
אמרי האזינה אדוני 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 אדוני.
Consider my meditation, my meditation, my meditation, my meditation, my meditation.
בינה הגיגי 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 הגיגי.
Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God. My King and my God. My King and my God.
מלכי ואלוהי 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 ואלוהי.
For unto thee will I pray, will I pray, will I pray.
כי אליך אתפלל 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 אתפלל.
My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them that speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thy mercy, and in thy fear will I worship toward thy holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in thy righteousness because of mine enemies. Make thy way straight before my face. For there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is very wickedness. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy thou them, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee. But let all those that put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Let them also that love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Lord, wilt bless the righteous. With favor wilt thou compass him as with a shield, 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 as with a shield.
Shield and lead, shield and lead. So here, today's daily Psalm. A psalm that has a theme on prayer in the Hebrew. Now, we know prayer from the English, but as we study the Hebrew, there's a deeper and a more relevant idea of this word that we call pray and prayer. I'd like to share this right here for your ear. Palal, prayer. In HaTorah, Proverbs 28, verse 9. Hear this, today's daily psalm.
Yes, a section in Mark 11 and 24. With the morning prayer psalm. Yes, a section in Mark 11 and 24. With the morning prayer psalm, Psalm 5, verses 2 and 3, focusing on the theme of praying in the sense of the verb et palal, though the other prayer we have in the next verse is italicized in the KJV, and we had pointed that out in the palal, tefillah, and Psalm 5, the morning prayer. And then after the broadcast, we shared that Rhema word on the daily Psalm 5, very important morning prayer psalm, the principles there, the precepts, we can say. Now we have Mark chapter 11, verse 24, where HaMoshiach, Yeshua, Christos Jesus, Geta Jesus says, Isaac says, therefore I say to you, what things soever ye all desire, when ye pray, So that's the palal, right? The palal sense. Now it's interesting as we went through that, meaning to judge, to like whether mentally or officially, like the difference between that sense of judge and the shofet mishpat sense. Then it says when ye pray, it says, of course, you got the Eli believe. Now I went through the pistil in the Koine Greek, the 4100, which says to think to be true, which is the same as the Amen, right? We have the Amen, Revelation 3:14, true and faithful witness. So to admit, and so we bring out that sense of, instead of be naive and getting caught up on that kind of loss or mistranslation right there, bring out the sense of admit as true. Now, what do you admit? What do you admit as true? What do you have faith? So here we have the pistiu, as in pistis sophia, faith, wisdom, pistiu as the verb to think, to be true, to be persuaded of, to credit, important word, credit. Many would say belief, but then credit is perhaps a more applicable to understand the true Hebraic sense, credit. Like something incredible, that means it's not credit worthy, right? If your credit card or bank or something, the credit company says to you, well, your credit history is incredible. It's basically the saying to you, it's not very credit worthy. They can't extend you any credit, right? So that sense of pisteu, the sense of the word that's often translated as faith and believe and belief, so forth and so on. Not to get caught up on the confusion of Eli Eve, getting to the root, the Hebrew Amanah, and here as the Hebrews and those remnant tribes, the black Jews, or even in Egypt, latter day Egypt, the translation from the Hebrew into the LXX, the Septuagint, was by Ionai people. So this was a good and a correct choice of words, pisteu, to bring out the sense of Amanah, the true sense of belief and faith. Right? To think to be true. What do you think to be true? What are you persuaded of? What do you credit? What is credit worthy from your understanding and understanding of HaTorah, of Jah law? And then when it has placed confidence in the confidence, teaching of His Majesty, confidence in the victory of good, good over evil, confidence, confidence, right? And then, that sense of belief comes in, but it's confusion. So getting the true root is the credit. What do you credit? Right? What do you admit as true? Right? What do you admit as true? Now it can have its moral, its religious reference, New Testament, Brit Chadash, the conviction, and the trust in which a man is impelled by a certain inner and the higher prerogative and the law HaTorah of the soul, the trust in Yeshua, trust in Ha-Elohim, as able to aid either in obtaining or doing something. Some call that the saving faith, but the basic sense to admit is true and trust, to entrust. What do you entrust? Even the word sound. What do you have faith in? What do you admit in? What do you place credit in upon with respect or respectfully to a person or a thing? That is credit. The implications to entrust, especially one's iritical well-being, to Ha-Moshiach, or to that word, the word, in the beginning with the word made flesh, to put in trust with. What is truth-worthy? What is trustworthy? Now, another sense came out even afterward, just iditating on the podcast and the broadcast, where it says, he who forgets the law, right, even his prayer, it says, is an abomination. Do we have that correct right here? It says, he that turneth away his ear to Shema, from hearing, from the hearing, his ear, from hearing the law, HaTorah, even his prayer, says right here, even Tefilato, right, his prayer, abomination. Even his prayer, abomination. Now, it's interesting in the KJV, if you search the KJV Bibles for law and prayer, those two words in a KJV biblical search, you have Proverbs here, 28 and 9, and the only other connection with this in the translation is Daniel 9 and 13. So we have a Proverb 28 and 9, bringing out the sense right here. Let's go to the Hebrew. It says, Meisir azno mishamoa Torah gam tefilato to'eva. So if someone quits or stops listening to HaTorah, God's direction, instruction, even tefilato, his prayer as a noun. Remember, prayer as a noun is not found in Psalm 5, I think is verse 3, because the verse is like a verse difference. But where you have in the KJV italics, prayer in italics, So the connection of HaTorah, and thus even getting more to the root of the palal, falal in tefillah. Tefillah as a noun, but think in the Hebrews, et palal, I will pray. As in verse 2, I will pray. Right? It says, I will direct, I will order my words. I would order, whether it's the prayer sense is how I am mentally, accrediting, right? Iritically, right? What I'm accrediting in I psycho-spiritual state that I'm asking or beseeching or imploring or supplicating according to HaTorah. So the prayer, true prayer, is connected with the direction, instruction, is in harmony, as we can say, or in sync, right? In sync with the spirit and the truth of HaTorah. This is why it says, Meisir azno mishmo'a Torah dam tefilato to'eba. He that turneth away azno, his ear, azno mishmo'a, the ear, listening ear. He who turns away the listening ear from the Torah, gam also, tefilato, his prayer, the noun, as a sense of noun, the prayer, to'eba is detestable, is abomination. It brings out the hardest sense of that. It's abominable, it's disgusting. It's disgusting. It's disgusting to pray to he who be lawlessly. It's to pray. That's like, why are you wasting, like in court? They say, why are you wasting the time of the court? It's like a contempt of the court. In other words, he that turneth away his ear from hearing Torah, from hearing Torah, direction, instruction, even to filato, his prayer shall be an abomination. So here, once again, that connection with the H8605 to filah, often translated as prayer. And it's also in the psalm titles, a poetic or like a liturgical prayer, a certain pattern of prayer, right? And then getting to the root palal, to intervene, to interpose, also to meditate, to ideate, to judge, to intercede. But there's an inner sense, in a sense of judging, in the sense of officially, according to Torah, and mentally in the psycho-spiritual state. By extension, you can now intercede or pray and treat for others, like represent someone else's case, as it were. So the judge sense, right, is not the same as the shofet judge sense, or not even as the don. We have don sense, the words don, shofet. If we look at the different, there's nuances of words that often are simply translated in English as the same word. And that often causes confusion, like when the Messiah, in translation, people assume, right? They imagine some error. They imagine something. They'll say, well, when he says, judge not, it means like don't condemn. They're looking at the context of the language in the study. Don't condemn, right? Don't condemn, right? So this is a different sense. Don't be in a condemnatory state of mind. Because as we go on in the word sound of HaMoshiach that we have in Mark chapter 11, he says to forgive, right? So that Abba, Father, Elohim Ha'am, forgives I and I, right? Because we could say the harmony, so to speak, for lack of a better word, the karma or the reciprocity as it is in the creation of Melech HaOlam, the universal king, the king of the universe, right? The universe, the reflection in the creation is built also in receptivity, right? To his word, sound, power. So this is a very, very important verse to connect with that theme and the idea of the root of tefillah in the Hebrew from palal, falal, right, which means to judge in the sense of officially according to Torah, right, because Torah, official, direction, instruction, and Proverbs 28:9. He that turneth his ear from the hearing of Torah, his tefilato, his prayer will be to'aiba, will be disgusting. His petition, his prayer will be disgusting. So this is a very interesting connection in how Moshiach in Mark chapter 11, just summing up right here, chapter 11, this section here, which says have faith, right? That emunah be'Elohim, right? Have admittance, trust, confidence in Elohim, in the true good, the true God. For verily, amen. Right? Yea, amen. Trustworthy is what I'm saying to you. For verily I say to you that whosoever shall say to this mountain, be thou removed and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart. These are gems here. Shall not doubt. Right? There's no wavering in his mind state. If there's wavering in your mind state, you have to check it out. This is why he says, I will direct my prayer. I will direct what I'm saying. If in the context of a prayer, a supplication, an invocation, right? Shall not doubt in his heart, waver in his mind, but shall believe or credit or admit as true that those things which he saith shall come to pass because they're in conformity, right, with Torah, direction, instruction. He shall have whatsoever he saith. Therefore I say to you, what things soever ye desire, showing that desire is not always a bad thing, what things you desire according to the direction, instruction. When ye pray, right, when you pray, when you judge, you mentally, officially weigh it and bring it forward and order your words. It says, believe, but the sense of credit, admit as true that ye receive. So when ye bring forward your petition, you know that you are standing, right, in sync, in harmony, in oneness, right, with his instruction. So you kabbalah it, you receive it, and ye shall have them. And when ye stand praying, here's the Amida. In Judaically speaking, the Amida prayer says, forgive, let it go, leave it behind, let it go. Right? If ye have aught against any, that your Father, who is, notice it says also, that's a key word right there, also who is in Hashemayim may forgive you your trespasses. So that's the Hebraic, the common sense right there. He will forgive you your trespasses. But if you do not forgive, don't let it go. There's a verse in the scripture, if I hold iniquity in my heart, right, Lord, you do not hear me. There's that verse right there. So this goes along with what we have here in Mark chapter 11. Here we're at verse 26. But if you do not forgive, neither will your Father who is in the heavens, the higher region, forgive your trespasses, let them go. Right? Do unto others. We call this the golden rule. Right? The golden rule is the golden rule. Right? The golden rule. Do unto others. Love your brother as yourself. Right? He says that if I hold iniquity, right, in my heart. Let's see if we have this psalm right here. If I regard, this is if I regard, the KJV, this is Psalm 66:18. If I regard iniquity in my heart, Adonai, the Lord, Adonai, will not hear me. It's interesting. So just connecting the dots here on that theme, right, on that theme right here. If I regard, so it's instruction. Not just word sound only, but it's the word sound and also us receiving that instruction and crediting, admitting as truth that at the core and the innermost of the innocence, if I regard iniquity in my heart, in my mind, right, Adonai would not hear me. And then we see how the Messiah, he emphasizes that point of forgiving, of letting that go. That's why he says, don't judge not. He says, judge not. He says, judge not. Don't condemn. Stop condemning. See, because if you regard iniquity in your heart, you're going to be condemning, and then your prayer is going to be in vain because he's not hearing that. In other words, he's not feeling that. Right? Jehovah is not feeling that. Right? And so on these themes right here, as they connect together to bring out and illuminate on practical application, just touching on this right here, the connecting the dots right here on prayer, what it is and how it may be more effective, especially according to Yahweh, truth and life, his direction, instruction, according to Torah, HaTorah, according to the Orit, yes, the Ethiopic Torah, 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 Ethiopic
I'm going to testify. Down on day, in the land of the sinking sand, Jah vengeance surely come down on day.
Psalm 5. Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For unto thee will I pray. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. The foolish shall not stand in my sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them that speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thy mercy, and in thy fear will I worship toward thy holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in thy righteousness because of mine enemies. Make thy way straight before my face. For there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is very wickedness. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy thou them, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee. But let all those that put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Let them also that love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Lord, wilt bless the righteous. With favor wilt thou compass him as with a shield, 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 shield.
מזמור ה' למנצח אל הנחילות מזמור לדוד. אמרי האזינה אדוני בינה הגיגי. הקשיבה לכל שבעי מלכי ואלוהי כי אליך אתפלל. אדוני בוקר תשמע קולי בוקר אערוך לך ואצפה. כי לא אל חפץ רשע אתה, לא יגורך רע, לא יתייצבו הוללים לנגד עיניך, שנאת כל פועלי אבן, תאבד דוברי כזב, איש דמים ומרמה יתעב אדוני, ואני ברוב חסדך אבוא ביתך, אשתחווה אל היכל קודשך ויראתך. אדוני נחני וצדקתך למען שוררי, הישר לפני דרכך, כי אין בפיהו נכונה, קרבם אבות, קבר פתוח גרונם, לשונם יחליקון. האשימם אלוהים יפלו מן מועצותיהם, ברוב פשעיהם הדליחהו, תמרו בך, וישמחו כל חוסה בך, לעולם ירמנו, ותסך עלימו, ויעלצו בך אוהבי שמך. כי אתה תברך צדיק אדוני, קצינה רצון תעתרנו.
Rastafari, Abagada, Hawazat, Taya, Kaya, Manasai, Patala, Warashata. I'm gonna testify. Evil, boy, everything takes time. Evil.
And here, today's psalm, Mizmor Hey, Psalm 5. Psalm V, Mizmor Hey. Here, a midrash. Here, a study on the Psalms, today's psalm, Mizmor Hey, Psalm 5. Lanatzeach il ha-nechilot, Mizmor le-Dawid. For the leader, upon the nehilot, possessions. Mizmor le-Dawid, a psalm of David. Here, the title, the superscription, Hebraically, the first verse. Lanatzeach il ha-nechilot, Mizmor LeDavid. This verse is to be considered in the light, in the illumination of what Scripture says elsewhere. From the wilderness to Matana, and from Matana to Nachaliel, and from Nachaliel to Barmot, and from Barmot to the valley that is in the country of Moab. Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 21, verse 18b to verse 20a. So this verse, the opening verse, here, Mizmor Hey, Psalm 5, Psalm V, Mizmor Hey, La Menatzeach, Il Ha Nechilot, Mizmor LeDavid. For the leader, La Menatzeach, chief musician, upon the Nechilot, possessions, a psalm of David. La Menatzeach, Il Ha Nechilot, Mizmor LeDavid. So the opening verse, the superscription, the title, this verse is to be considered in the light, the illumination, what Scripture says elsewhere, even in Bamidbar, in Numbers chapter 21, verse 18b to verse 20a. From the wilderness to Matana, and from Matana to Nachaliel, and from Nachaliel to Barmot, and from Barmot to the valley that is in the country of Moab. Ua mia midbar Matana. Ua mia Matana Nachaliel. Ua mia Nachaliel Barmot. Ua mi Barmota ha Gaia Shara Bia Sedei Moab. Midrash note, here, Midrash study on the Psalms, Midrash Tehillim, here, Mizmor Hey, Psalm 5, Midrash note, here, Nachaliel. The expositions that follow, they exploit the similarity of sound and meaning Hebraically in the two words, Nechilot and Nachaliel. Here, the expositions here in this Midrash on Mizmor Hey, Psalm 5, the expositions that follow, they exploit the similarity of sound and meaning Hebraically and the Hebrew meaning in the two words, these two Hebrew words, Nechilot, and Nachaliel. Rav Yehuda, Judah, took the expression from the wilderness to Matana, from the wilderness to Matana, to mean that by virtue of the kind of place a wilderness is, the Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, the children of Israel, the Israelites were there, deemed worthy of having HaTorah, the Torah given to them at the hands of Moshe, at the hands of Moses, to whom it is said, even in Shemot, Exodus chapter 31, verse 18, the Lord gave the two tables of testimony. From Matana to Nachaliel, he took to mean that there, the Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, the children of Israel, possessed themselves of a false god, saying, quote, this is thy God, O Israel, even in Shemot, in Exodus chapter 32, verse 8. From Nachaliel to Barmot, he took to mean that after they took possession of the false god, the angel of death, of Mot, of Mavet, came out against them, as is said even in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 14, verse 35. Surely in this wilderness they shall be consumed, and they shall die. And from Barmot to the valley that is in the country of Moab, he took to mean that in the valley of Moab, they did that which delayed their entrance into the land, so that Moses, the servant of the Lord, having died outside the land, had to be buried in the valley. Of this, Jeremiah, said, how canst thou say, I am not defiled, I have not gone after Baalim? See thy way in the valley, know what thou hast done. Even here, Jeremiah, chapter 2, verse 23. Eich tomri, lo nitameti, achreha be'alim, lo halakti, re'i darkeka,
bagaya, de'iya meh asit. How canst thou say, here, speaking to she, he who be, speaking to she, Eik tomri, lo nitameti, I am not defiled. How? Eik, how? Tomri, how canst thou say, speaking to she, Eik tomri, lo nitameti, I am not defiled. How can you say, lo nitameti, achrei ha-ba'alim, lo halakti, I have not gone after the Baalim. Achrei ha-ba'alim, lo halakti. See, darkeka bagaya, see thy way, bagaya, see thy way in the valley. Darkeka bagaya, no, become cognizant, no, speaking to she, meh asit, what thou hast done. Meh asit, know what thou, the eye, hast done. Aik tomri, lo nitameti, achrei ha-ba'alim, lo halakti, darkeka bagaya, meh asit. How canst thou say, I am not defiled, I have not gone after the Baalim? See thy way in the valley, know what thou, the eye, hast done. So here, Midrash notes. Ua mia midabar matane. From the wilderness, ua mia midabar matane. From the wilderness to matane. Matana. From the wilderness to matana. Here, Midrash note. A wilderness, midbar, a wilderness is a place held in common, free from chatiat, sin, akari, lack, and free from distraction. So here, Midrash note, Rav Yehuda, Judah, took the expression, midbar matana, from the wilderness to matana, to mean that by virtue of the kind of place a midbar is. A wilderness is a place held in common, free from chatiat, sin, akari, lack, forfeiture, and free from distraction. The Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, were there deemed worthy of having ha-Torah, having the Torah given. So here, Midrash note, matana means Hebraically, literally a gift. Matana means literally in Hebrew. Matana means a gift to them. So the children of Israel, the Israelites there in the wilderness, were deemed worthy of having ha-Torah, the directions, instructions, the teaching of His Majesty given to them. Matana, at the hands of Moshe, to whom it is said, here, Shemot, Exodus chapter 31, verse 18, the Lord gave the two tables, the two tablets of testimony. Vayitena il Moshe kaloto ledaber ito abehar Sinai shnei lochota ha'eduta lochota evenna ketuvim be'etzra Elohim. And He gave to Moses, Vayitena il Moshe, when He had made an end of speaking with him. Kaloto ledaber ito, upon Mount Sinai, Behar Sinai, the two tables, the two tablets of testimony. Shnei lochota ha'eduta, tables, tablets of stone. Lochota eben, written. Ketuvim, written with the finger. Ketuvim be'etzva of Elohim. Be'etzva Elohim. Vayitena illa Moshe kekaloto ledaber ito behar Sinai shnei lochota ha'eduta lochota eben ketuvim be'etzva Elohim. Uamia matana Nachaliel, from matana to Nachaliel, he took to mean that they, the Bnei Yisrael, the
sons, the children, the Israelites possess themselves of a false god. Here, Midrash note, Nachaliel, or pointed as Nachliel. Nachliel is read as though it were written, Nachilu El. Nachliel is read as though it were written Nachilu El. They acquired a god. Nachilu El. They acquired a god. So thus, here, from Matana to Nachliel, Rav Yehuda, Judah, took to mean that there, the Bnei Yisrael, the sons, the children of Israel, possessed themselves of a false god. Nachliel is read as though written Nachilu El. They acquired an El. They acquired a god. Shemot, Exodus chapter 32, verse 8, where it's written, quote, "This is thy God, O Israel. Saru amahira mina hadereka ashara suitim asua lahem egela masekha vayishatachwu alawua vayayezibuchu alawua vayayomru Eile Eloheka Yisrael Asher Ha'eluka Me Eretz Mitzrayim." They have turned aside. Here, Shemot. Exodus chapter 32, verse 8. They have turned aside quickly out of the way that I commanded them. Saru Mahira Mina Hadereka Shara Suiti. They have made them a molten calf. Asua lahem egela maseka, and have worshipped it. Wayishatachu alawu, and have sacrificed to it. Wayayizibechu alawu, and said, Wayomru, this is thy God, O Israel. Eile Eloheka, which, or that who brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Wayomru, Eile Eloheka Yisrael Asher He'eluka Me Eretz Mitzrayim. This is thy God. These Eile Eloheka, these thy Elohim, these thy God. Eile Eloheka Yisrael, these. This translator says this in the Hebrews, Eile, these, Eloheka, these, thy God, Yisrael, Asher, who, He'eluka, who caused you to come up, who allied you all, who allied the eye, He'eluka, Me Eretz Mitzrayim. These, thy God, who brought you up out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the land of Kemet. And from Nachaliel to Bamot, and where it reads from Nachaliel to Bamot, Ua Mia Nachaliel Bamot, and from Nachaliel to Bamot, Rav Yehuda, Judah, took to mean that after they took possession of the false god, the angel of death, the Mela'aka Mavet, the Mela'aka Mawet Mot, came out against them. Here, Midrash note, Bamot. Bamot is read as though written Ba Mawet. Ba Mawet, Ba Mavet, Ba Mawet. Bamot is read as though written Ba Mawet. The angel of death came out. Ba Mawet. Ba Mawet. The angel of death came out. Ba Lahem may be also understood as came for them. Ba Lahem. Ba Lahem may be understood Hebraically as came for them. Came to announce to them that the hour of Mawet, Mut has come. As it is said, even in Bamidbar in Numbers chapter 14, verse 35, surely in this wilderness they shall be consumed, and there they shall die. Bamidbar Numbers chapter 14, verse 35. Ani Yehovah dibarti im lo zota ese lekol ha'eda hara'ah hazota hanano adim alu wabamidabar hazeh yitamu visham yamutu. I, he who be, who he be. Ani Yahovah, I, he who be, who he be, have spoken. Ani Yehovah dibarti. Surely, surely this will I do to all this evil congregation. Ani Yehovah dibarti imlo zota esel kol ha'edah hara'a, that are gathered together against me, that are gathered together against me. Ha no adim alai. Ha no adima alai, against I. In this wilderness, Bamidbar Hazeh, in this wilderness, Bamidbar Hazeh, they shall be consumed. Bamidbar Hazeh, Yitam, and they with Sham, and there with Sham, they shall die. With Sham Yamutu. Ani Yehovah Dibarti Imlo. Zota esel kola ha'eda hara'a hazota hanno adima alai bamidbar hazeh yitamu wishama yamutu. And from Bamoth to the valley that is in the country of Moab, Ua mia Bamota hagaya shara bia sedeh Moab. He, Rav Yehuda, took to mean that in the valley of Moab, they did that which delayed their entrance into Haaretz, into the land, so that Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, of Jehovah, having died outside the land, had to be buried in the valley. Of this, Jeremiah said, how canst thou say, I am not defiled? I have not gone after the Baalim. See thy way in the valley. Know what thou hast done. Eich Tomri, lo nit'ameti, achreya ha-Baalim, lo halati, ri, darkeka bagaya, da'i me asit. Ha-Rebanim, the rabbis, the scholars of Torah, took the Hebrew, U'ami-ami-dabara, matana, from the wilderness to matana, to mean that by virtue of the kind of place of midbar, a wilderness is, the Bnei Yisrael, the sons, the children of Israel, were there deemed worthy of having ha-Torah, the Torah given, matana, gift, matana, to them. But from matana to Nachaliel, ha-Rebanim, took to mean that they, the Bnei Yisrael, the sons, the children of Israel, the Israelites, took possession, Nachilu, of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, of the Holy One, blessed be He, as their God, as their El, the true El, Ha'el. And Ha'el, the true good, the true God, the Almighty Ha'el, took possession of them as Amo, as His people. And here, a midrash note right here. In the ET, the edited text, these two interpretations, these two targums of Bamidbar of Numbers chapter 21, verse 18b, and Numbers Bamidbar chapter 21, verse 19a, are not in the order in Scripture. They are accordingly transposed here. Hence, here, said David, I shall compose a mizmor, a psalm, a chant, an intonation, Isis. I shall compose a mizmor about both acts of possession. For the leader upon the nechilot, possessions, a psalm of David, of Dawid. Lam natzeyach illa hanechilot mizmor le Dawid. Another comment on from Matana to Nachaliel. Do not read from Matana. but because of matana, because of the gift, matana, that thou, O God, O true good, hast possessed us, I and I, of. Here, Midrash note, Nachliel is now rendered as though it was spelled Nachalta El, thou, O El, true good, true God, Almighty, has possessed us, possessed I and I of. Nachalta El, thou, the I, O El, true good, true God, has possessed us, I and I of. Nachalta El. That is because of the well that Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, the sanctified, set apart one, the Ilo one, Baruch Hu, blessed be He, gave to the Bnei Yisrael, to the sons of Yisrael, to the children of Israel. They sang a song. And here a Midrash note, Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 21, verse 17, that reads, Then sang Israel this song, Spring up, O well, sing y'all to it. אז ישיר ישראל את השירה הזאת, אלי וער, עינו לה. Then sang Israel, Yisrael, this song. אז ישיר ישראל את השירה הזאת. Spring up, oh well. אלי בער, אלי בער. Sing y'all. I know, laha, sing y'all to it, sing y'all to her, sing y'all to her. Az yashira Yisrael, et hashira hazota, Eliya be'er, I know, laha. For the water of the well, the be'er, the water of the well flowed out like a river, like a nahal for them. So that whenever a woman, an Isha, wanted to go from her father's bait, her father's house, to her husband's bait, her husband's house, she had to go in a boat. And here, Midrash note on, for the water of the well flowed out like a river, a nahal, like a river, nahal for them. As David says, God opened the rock, and the waters gushed out. They had to go in boats, tziyot, as in a river. Here. Psalm 105, verse 41. Patach sora vayazuvu mayim halku batziyota nahar. He opened the rock, patach sora, and waters gushed out. Wayazubu mayim. They ran, halku, a river in the dry places. Batziyot nahar, patach sur, wayazubu mayim, halku, batziyot nahar. And the Midrash note here, the AV authorized version reads, they ran in the dry places, the tziyot, like a river, batziyot nahar. What can tziyot mean here except boats, as in the phrase gallant ships, sea, in Yeshayahu, in Isaiah chapter 33, verse 21, gallant ship, sea. Ki im sham adir Yahuwah lanu, mikoma neharima yorima rachveya yadim, balatelekaboa onia shait, lo ya'avreinu. But there, he who be Yahweh Jehovah will be with us in majesty. Ki im sham adir Yahuwah lanu. But there, he who be will be with I and I will be with we will be with us in majesty. Ki, im, sham, adir, yaolan, in a place of broad rivers and streams. Mikoma neharima yorima rachveya yadai, wherein shall go no galley with oars. Balatelekaboa oniashait, neither shall gallant ship pass thereby. With sea adir lo ya abrain, with sea adir, gallant ship, with sea adir will not pass thereby. Lo ya abrain. So here the connection with the sea adir, gallant ship or majestic ship, the majestic sea, with siot, which can mean boats as well as dry place. A different exposition of the phrase from Bamidbar, from Numbers chapter 21, verse 18b to verse 28, from the wilderness to Matana, and from Matana to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamot, and from Bamot to the valley. Ua mia midbar Matana, mia Matana Nahaliel, ua mia Nahaliel Bamot, ua mia Bamot Hagai. Rav Yanai said, he who makes himself a pasture, whereon all may trample, gains the gift. Matana, gains the gift, the matana of Torah. And after he gains the matana of Torah, Ha'el, the true good, the true God, Hayel, takes possession, Nahaliel, of him. And after Hayel takes possession of him, he rises to high places. As it is said, Nahaliel to Bamot, high places. So here, Midrash notes right here. The note, he who makes himself a pasture. He who makes himself a pasture. The Midbar, the wilderness is referred to as a pasture because cattle were put out to graze in it. So he who makes himself a pasture, because the wilderness is referred to as a pasture because of cattle. Cattle were put out to graze in it, whereon all may trample, gains the gift, the matana of Torah. And after he gains the matana of Torah, Hayel takes possession, Nachaliel, of him. And after Ha'el takes possession of him, he rises to high places, as is said, Nachaliel to Bamot, high places. So here, Midrash note, and after Ha'el, Elohim, to Bamot, to high places. But if he then becomes arrogant, affliction will visit him. For it is said, Bamot to the valley. Mi Bamot Hagai. Mi Bamot Hagai. From Bamot, high places, to the valley. Mi Bamot Hagai. The Edat Yisrael, the congregation, the aggregation of Israel, said, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, possessed me of the gift of the well as a gift. The congregation, aggregation of Yisrael, said, because HaKadosh, the Holy One, Baruch Hu, blessed be He, possessed me of the well as a gift. And here, Midrash note, the text here in the Midrash Tehillim, in the Midrash on Psalms, the text, it returns to the previous Targum, the previous interpretation Targum of Matana, as the gift of the Be'er, of the well. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu possessed me, possess I of the well as a matana, as a gift, I took Hayel, the true good, the true God, as the lot of mine inheritance. Nachalti. Hence here it is said from Matana to Nahaliel. as it is written even in Ika, Lamentation, chapter 3, verse 24. The Lord is my portion, saith my soul, saith my psyche. Lamentations chapter 3, verse 24. Chelki Yoah, Amra Nafshi, Alkin, Ochilawu, he who be, Jehovah is my portion, saith my soul, saith my psyche, Nafshi. She says, he who be is my portion. She says, Chelki Yoah, Amra Nafshi, Alkin, therefore, Ochil lau, I will hope, I will expect in him. Ochil lau, chelki Yahuwah amra nafshi, alkein, ochil lau. And Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be he, says to Yisrael, as I am your portion, so you are my portion. As is said, for the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 9. Kia chelek Yahuwah ammo Yaakov chevel nachalto. For the portion of he who be of Yahuwah, of Jehovah, is his people. Ki chelek Yahuwah ammo. Jacob, Yaakov, the lot, chevel, of his inheritance. Nachelato, Yaakov, chebel, nachelato. Ki chelek Yahuwah ammo, Yaakov, chebel, nachelato. And so David said, you are the inheritance of Hakadosh Baruch Hu, of the Holy One, the sanctified one, the set apart one, the Ayla one, Baruch Hu, blessed be he, and he is your inheritance. For it is said even in Isaiah chapter 19, verse 25, the Lord of hosts hath blessed him, saying, blessed be Yisrael, mine inheritance. And here, Isaiah chapter 19, the fuller verse 25. Asher berko Yahuwah Tzebaot lemor, Baruch Ami Mitzrayim, Uama Isaiah Yadaya Ashur, V'nachlati Yisrael, for that he who be of hosts of armies hath blessed him. Asher berko Yahuwah Tzebaot, saying, Lemor, Baruch, blessed be Ami Mitzrayim, blessed be Mitzrayim, Egypt, Kemet, my people. Baruch Ami Mitzrayim, Uama Isaiah Yadaya Ashur, and Assyria Ashur, the work of my hands. Uama Isaiah Yadai Ashur, and Yisrael, and Israel, mine inheritance. Nachlati Yisrael. Asher berko Yahweh Tzebaot, for he who be of hosts hath blessed him. Asher berko Yahweh Tzebaot lemor, Baruch Ami Mitzrayim, Uama Isaiah Yadai Ashur, Nachalato Yisrael, and Israel, mine inheritance. Note that the verse of the Mizmor, of the psalm, does not use the singular, nachla, but the plural, nechilot. And here, Midrash note, nechilot is, strictly speaking, the plural of nechila, not nachila. Nechilot is, strictly speaking, Hebraically speaking, the plural of nechila and not nachila. Once again, to the Midrash on Mizmor Hey, note that the verse of the Mizmor does not use the singular nachila, but the plural nechilot, in order to signify two inheritances. The one you're taking possession of Ha'el, Hayel, Ha'el Elohim, the true good, the true God, and the other, his taking possession of you. And what phrase proves that only after the gift of the well were the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel, ready to take possession of Ha'el, the true good, the true God, Ha'el Elohim, as their inheritance? From Matana to Nachaliel, before the Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel, the children of Israel, drank from the well, even on the very day they were to drink from it, they used to ask, according to Shemot, according to Exodus chapter 17, verse 7, is the Lord, is Yahweh, is Jehovah among us or not? Is he who he be among us or not? Hayesh Yahweh be'kerbeinu im ayin. Hayesh Yahweh be'kerbeinu im ayin. As if to say, if he is, if he be, it is good. If he is not, if he be not, we, I, shall choose another El, Elohim, another God for ourselves, for ourselves. But after they drank from the well, they said, according to Shemot, Exodus chapter 24, verse 7, all that the Lord have spoken, we will do and obey. Vayikach Sefer HaBrita, Vayikra be'aznei ha'am. Vayomru kol asher diber Yahweh na'aseh v'nishma'a. And he took the book of the covenant, Vayikach Sefer HaBrit, and read Vayikra in the hearing of the people, be'aznei ha'am, in the ears of the people, and he read in the ears and the hearing of the people, Vayikra be'aznei ha'am. And they said, Vayomru kol asher diber Yahweh na'aseh v'nishma'a. All that he who be, that Jehovah have spoken, will we do, will I do, and obey and hear. Kol asher diber Yahweh na'aseh v'nishma'a. Thereby, we, I came into possession of two inheritances. We took thee, the I, and we took Ha-Torah, and we took the Torah. And here, Midrash note on, and we took the Torah. This is the PE, the printed edition. The words, quote, and thou didst cause us to inherit Ha-Torah and the Eretz Yisrael and the land of Israel are omitted here as in the PE, the printed edition. As David said, thy testimonies have I taken as a heritage forever. Even here in Psalm 119, verse 111, thy testimonies have I taken as a heritage forever, forever. Nachalti edoteka le'olam, thy testimonies, edoteka, have I taken as a heritage. Nachalti edoteka, forever le'olam. For they are the rejoicing of my heart, for the rejoicing of my heart. Kia si sona libi heima, they are. The rejoicing of my heart, they are. Kia si sona libi heima, 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 In another exposition, Nechilot, inheritance, is taken to mean the Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Of that, it is said, in those days, they shall come together to gather, to the land that I have given for an inheritance to your fathers, to your patriarchs. But I said, shall I put thee among the other children? Nay, nah. I shall give thee a land of desire, a heritage, nachelat, of beauty, desired by the nations, the Tzibiot Goyim. Here, Yeremiah, Ermias, Jeremiah, chapter 3, verses 18 to 19a. Midrash note on a heritage of beauty desired by the nations. The Yehudi version, the goodliest heritage of the nations. Ba mayim ba yamim ha in those days. Ba yamim ha ילכו בית יהודה על בית ישראל ויבואו יחדיו מארץ הצפון על הארץ אשר הנחלתי את אבותיכם. In those days, בימים ההם, the house of Judah, of Yehuda, shall walk with the house of Israel. The house of Yehuda, of Judah, shall trod with the house of Israel. Yelku Beita Yehuda al Beita Yisrael. And they shall come together out of the land of the north. Where Yabou Yachdawa me Eretza Tzafon, to the land that I have given for an inheritance to your fathers, to your patriarchs. Al haaretz asher hinachalti et ebotekem. Ve'anochi amarti eikha ashiteikha ba banim ve'etena laka eretz chemta. Nachelata tzavia tzivota goyim. But I said, where anoki amarti. But I said, where anoki amarti. How would I put thee among the sons, the children among the sons? Ashiteka ba banim, and give thee a pleasant land. Where etenalaka eretza chemda, the goodliest heritage of the nations. Nachlata tzviya tziboota goyim. Can tzbiot goyim mean anything else except that the Eretz Yisrael was desired and coveted by all the nations, all the goyim, all the heathen, the international community? Consider the mashal, the parable of a king, of a melech, of a negus, even a negus and negas, who was seated at his royal table. He had many children, but he loved the youngest one most. He was about to apportion their inheritances. Among the parcels of land, there was one of great beauty that all the children coveted. And so Hamelech, and so the king of Negus, even Negus and Neges, said, let this parcel of land remain as my own portion. May this parcel of land remain as my own portion. As scripture says, even here in Devarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8, the Most High apportioned to the nations their inheritance. Behanachel Elyon Goyim, when the Most High Elyon gave to the nations, the Goyim, the international community, their inheritance. Behanachel Elyon Goyim. But to whom did he finally give his own portion? To his youngest child. For the verse says, the Lord's portion, Jehovah's portion to his people, to Jacob, to Yaakov, the lot of his inheritance. Kia chelek Yahweh Ammo Yaakov chebel na chelato. Jehovah's portion to his people. Ki chelek Yoa amo, to Yaakov, to Jacob, the lot of his inheritance. Yaakov chebel na chilato. And here Midrash note the word ammo, his people, in ki chelek Yahweh ammo, for the portion of he who be of Jehovah is his people. Here the Midrash notice ammo, his people, is rendered as though written le ammo, to his people. Here in Devarim in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 9. HaHekal, the temple, is also called an inheritance. For it is said even in Devarim in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 9, ye y'all are not as yet come to the rest, and to the inheritance, the Nachilah, that Yahweh Elohim, that he who be y'all Elohim, giveth y'all. Ki lo vatem ada ata illaha menucha illaha nachila asher Yahweh Eloheka noten alak. For y'all are not as yet come to the rest. Ki lo vatem ad ata illaha menucha, and to the inheritance with illaha nachila, that he who be y'all Elohim giveth you. That he who be, the I Elohim, giveth the I. Asher Yahweh Eloheka noten lak. When it is said in Bamidbar in Numbers 24 and 9, how goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, O Yaakov, and thy tabernacles, O Yisrael, O Israel. Here Hebraically, Bamidbar in Numbers, it's Numbers chapter 24, verse 5. Numbers chapter 24, verse 5. Ma tovu o haleka Yaakov, misha kenoteka Yisrael. How goodly are thy tents, O Jacob. Ma tovu o haleka Yaakov, thy dwellings, O Israel. Misha kenoteka Yisrael. Ma tovu o haleka Yaakov, Mia Shekinoteka Yisrael, wherein is the goodliness of Yaakov, of Jacob's tents. In that, quote, as the water brooks, the Nahal, are they spread forth. As the water brooks, are they spread forth. Kia nechalim nitayu. Ki nechalim nitayu. As the water brooks, ki nechalim, spread forth, stretched out, nitayu. Some render this as valleys stretched out, or as streams winding their long way. Kia nechalim nitayu. As the water brooks, the nechalim, kia nechalim, are they spread forth, nitayu. For like a water brook into that a man goes down unclean, but comes up clean, so is hekalo, so is the temple into that a man goes laden with chatiyat, with uckeries of sins, but comes forth without uckeries, without chatiyat, without sins. Thus, like this, when Moses said to the Bnei Yisrael, to the sons, to the children of Israel, in Devarim and Deuteronomy 12 and 9, ye y'all are not as yet come to the rest and to the inheritance. Ki lo batem ad ata illa ha menucha with illa ha nachila. By rest, menucha, ha menucha, the rest, by rest, menucha, he meant the Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. And by inheritance, Nachila, the inheritance, ha-nachila, by nachila, inheritance, he meant the tabernacle of Yaakov, the tabernacle of Jacob. Therefore, David said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all that thou, the I, has given us, has given I and I, as inheritance, is goodly and fair and beautiful, itiful, as is said even in Psalm 16, Hebraically, verses 5 to 6, The lot is fallen to me in a fair ground. Yea, the heritage beautifies me. The lot is fallen to I in a fair and itiful, a beautiful ground, a good ground. Yea, the heritage beautifies, itifies I. Chvalim nafluli bana'imim afanachlata shafra alai. The lines are fallen to me, are fallen to I in pleasant places. Chbali nafluli bana'imim bana'imim in pleasant places. Afa nachlat shafra alai. Yea, I have a goodly heritage. Af nachlat shafra alai. Shafra alai. A different exposition for the leader upon the nechilot. Here, nechilot is taken to mean grievous afflictions. Grievous afflictions. As in the verse, woe is me for my heart. My wound is grievous. Nachila. But I said, truly, this is a grief that, and I must bear it. Truly, this is a grief, and I must bear it. Here, Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 19. Oili Allah shivri nachla makati vani amarti ak ze cholli ze saen. Woe is me, oi li, for my hurt, Allah shibri. My wound is grievous, nachla makati. But I said, wa'ani amarti, ak, this is but a sickness. Wa'ani amarti, ak, ze choli, this is but a choli, a sickness. We're saenu, and I must bear it. Oi li al shibri nachla makati wa ani amarti akze choli we saenu. So too, Scripture says, even in Micah chapter 7, verse 8, when I sit in darkness, the Lord shall be a light to me. When I sit in darkness and disillumination, the Lord shall be a light, a illumination to me, to I. Ki eshev b'choshek Yahweh or li. Though I sit in darkness, ki eshev b'choshek, he who be, Jehovah is a light to me, Yahweh or li. Ki eshev b'choshek Yahweh or li. That is to say, if I had not sat in darkness, b'choshek Yahweh, Jehovah would never have been a light, an illumination to me, a light to I. Ki eshev b'choshek Yahweh or li. And likewise, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, blessed be he, says to the people of Israel, to Amo Yisrael, because you willingly suffered my decrees, therefore you are called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. Here, Isaiah chapter 61, verse 3. Vikora lahem eleya hatzedek mata'ah Yahuwah lehita paer, that they might be called terebinths, evergreen, fresh, terebinth trees of righteousness. Vikora lahem eleya hatzedek, the planting of Jehovah, he who be. Matah Yehovah, wherein he might glory. Lehita paer, Wikora lahem, eleya hatzedek, matah Yehovah, lehita paer, paer, tiferet, tafarai, that he might be glorified. Yes, I. Yes, Rastafari.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.